Hey, what's good, gamers? Accolonn here, and of course, welcome back to each and every one of you. You're about to watch a conversation between myself and Pyromancer where we go very, very deep onto things like the Titan lore, the origins of the universe, Azeroth, Argus, the old gods, Xal'atath, the war within the story within World of Warcraft. Like, it is going to be a jam-packed conversation. Turned out to be over 3 hours long, and we were, I think, planning to do more like 2 hours. I want to start by asking all of you to hit the like button if you enjoy this video. It does help out a ton. And then just a very quick apology here. Pyromancer's voice is a little bit quieter in the video than mine. I don't know how that turned out. The problem is I was recording the thing, but I made a change to my recording software about a week ago, and I forgot to revert the change. So Pyromancer's voice wasn't recorded in my recording so that I could manipulate the voices individually. And for some reason, that's how it turned into the stream. So I have rectified that for future conversations, but I just wanted to apologize to all of you if you hear Pyro much more quiet than what I am. That's not because I think I'm more important than Pyro. It was just a mistake on my side. So I really apologize for that. Anyways, enjoy the conversation. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Peace.
Yo, what's
Yo,
up? What's up?
how you doing, bro?
How's it? Good, bro. Good, bro. How are you?
I can't complain. I can't complain. Chat's freaking the out.
Yeah, same. Mine's mine's pretty excited too. Lots of first-time chatters too. So maybe people coming over from yours as well. So I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have a bunch of people in here as well from old way back when, and also some new faces. So
Yeah,
always very
it's
happy.
awesome, dude. How long's it been since we did something like this,
bro?
Dude,
I feel like 4 years, like Legion, wasn't it?
Dude. No, bro. Dude, Legion was not 4 years ago, Accolonn. Legion was like 7 years ago.
Oh, that's true, actually. Me.
Yeah, dude. That's what freaks me out about it. It's been so long. Yeah, I think.
What did we talk about the last time we did it? It was it has to be during Legion because we discussed some of the things that may come in BFA. I remember it because we were talking about Sylvanas.
We definitely talked a lot about Sylvanas. I remember that. Sylvanas was such a huge focus. I remember at the end of BFA with her becoming, or at the end of Legion with her becoming War Chief, and then the events of BFA. We talked a lot about her, of course, a lot about N'Zoth, and then I think we would be a little. I think we'd be missing something if we didn't assume that we talked at length about the Titans.
Yeah, well, obviously, right? Something you said in your video.
Especially them being bad.
Something you said in your video, by the way, where you reacted to my video about the Titans, that I want to confirm here for everyone is, you were absolutely the inspiration behind me starting to look at the Titans a lot more questionably. I remember at first, I just thought that the Titans weren't exactly, let's say, like, they were neutral, right? They weren't our friends, but they also weren't enemies. And then you started calling into question a lot of things about the Titans. And then through that lens, I started looking at the Titans and I was like, wait, but there's a lot of things that don't make sense with them. Like, holy shit. There's a lot of things they say that isn't true, just straight up, just lies. And then, yeah, I just became a complete hater of the Titans. But to be fair, my hatred now extends to the light as well. I have a deep-seated hatred for the light, or at least distrust for the light, and the Titans. Right. Because, yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, it kind of seems... Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think I always want to warn people about falling into the trap of... And first of all, that's awesome to hear. Thanks for... I mean, that's cool to hear you kind of confirm that. And I remember back when you were like first making some of your like first videos, and I made a video like acknowledging or reacting to one of them or something, and then we chatted after that. And yeah, those are way back in the day. I mean, I see people that, and what's crazy is that there's still people around that are, like you said, that are like from those days, bro. Back in even the Warlock days when you and I were making Warlock videos.
Dude, the other day someone came into my stream and they were like, hey, bro, just wanted to say love the new content. I missed the Warlock guides, though. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll get those comments, too, and I'm like, damn, dude. Like, That's old content. Like,
Oh yeah.
that's fucking crazy. Makes you think like maybe I don't even, maybe it'd be worth doing again still. I don't know if there's who makes those
Yeah.
nowadays, but
I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do Warlock guides because I just don't play at that level
Same.
anymore. And I kind of always
Same.
felt like you have to be a Mythic Raider at least to make guides. Because there's a lot of things that goes into making a guide that you only really understand when you're playing at that high level.
True.
The
Like which trinkets to use and how to, you know, what gear and how to actually use it, you know?
why would you like try out 5 different things if you're just doing heroic raids? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
look, you could show up in a drunken stupor and do heroic raids. That's not really a problem.
I've seen people show up in a drunken stupor and do mythic raids, to be fair.
True, you could probably try that as well.
Yeah, I feel like it comes with that a little level of credibility when you can say, "Oh yeah, I got cutting edge a couple months ago," and then people are like, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah." So
they see that you know at least what you're doing. The lore stuff, on the other hand, is not that at all. There's pretty much always people that doubt you, like no matter what the fuck you say. Which I feel is kind of like, we spoke about this before the call started. It's kind of part of the fun is having those disagreements with people and sort of, you know, getting into the nitty gritty stuff.
Right.
But this is sort of what I wanted to talk to you about. I told you I'll ram this at you during the live, catch you completely off guard and throw you right in the hot seat on this one.
Sure.
Right. So I've had this thing that I've been mulling over for a while now about the storytelling in WoW. And, you know, before we get going, I think we can all pretty much agree that after Legion, the storytelling in WoW sort of went, let's call it different. It wasn't, some may say, like me, the quality went down significantly after Legion. Some may just say different. It's fine. You know, I don't really mind arguing whichever way. But I sort of feel like, and this is going to be weird to say, but I kind of, and I don't want to speak for everyone, so I will take the blame on this, and I will say that I am definitely part of the blame for that, for shit going the way that it is. So the way I look at WoW, and I'll give this to you, and then I'll give you some time to give me your thoughts. But the way I look at WoW is I divide WoW into 3 time periods, right? So you have Classic to Wrath of the Lich King. That's 1 period. I call that the rule book period of WoW. Then you have Cataclysm all the way up to Warlords of Draenor, maybe like half, Warlords of Draenor half included in that. I call that rule book light. And then you have BFA and onwards, Legion being its own separate thing, and I'll explain that in a minute. So let me just ask you, do you agree with the story changed after Legion? Do you agree with that period of it?
I agree that it changed. Whether or not that's a good or bad thing, I think really depends on which expansion we're talking about and in what way. But I do think that, like, tonally there was a little bit of a shift. I think BFA had really actually promising lore. I think BFA was really stifled by its kind of some of its more terrible systems. And so a lot of what it had to offer is overshadowed. It's part of why I've been doing like this lore tour series where I go back and look at these instances like Uldir and stuff, because there is so much stuff to uncover there. However, when we look at the overarching narrative that's associated with the game, basically from BFA onward, I get this like feeling almost like there's almost like a something like shifted internally, and whether that was to do with the Frostyabi or whether that was to do with Metzen not really being at the helm as much anymore, or his outline not really being thought through past that point. I'm not really sure what caused that. I as a story enjoyer, I am fascinated to know, because it does kind of feel like BFA kind of had an issue of trying to tackle too many narratives at once. And then Shadowlands had an issue of focusing so heavily on one core narrative, but not really being able to like execute it very well. And so I just wonder like how we got such stark contrasts between the two different things, where on one hand we just have the myriad options, and it's almost like the light in the void. So it's kind of weird in that way, but I agree. It definitely feels different after Legion.
Yeah. Okay. So, in order to explain what I mean with the three different, and I think this will make it a lot more like clear what I'm trying to get to. So, anyone that's ever played D&D or Warhammer, the tabletop version, or basically Cyberpunk tabletop, will understand what I mean when I say rule books, right? So in D&D, for example, you have all these different editions, and with every new edition comes a new rule book that tells you how the spells operate now, what kind of how the classes play. And then the rule books will oftentimes have lore, so it will have sort of like an overarching world building experience where it will tell you, who's the most relevant villains right now, at least in Warhammer. It will tell you villains. It will tell you sort of what the state of the galaxy looks like right now. But, it doesn't really go into detail on any of that. It just sort of dumps a bunch of lore on you and then goes, go play your games, Okay. And that's what I meant with Classic to Wrath was really the rule book era of WoW. If you go and play through the Classic expansions, there's very little. So there's two types of storytelling, obviously. Narrative and then lore or world building. In Classic to Wrath, lore and world building was sort of everything. Narrative, like sort of the way I look at it is Final Fantasy is a great example of a masterfully crafted narrative experience, right? Where it takes you through the whole story and you are absolutely a part of it. The dialogue leads most of that story. It's just a phenomenal experience. Whereas Classic, that first period, was very much mostly about world building, very little narrative. Like most of the narrative was go kill 10 bears, bring back their assholes. Done. Right? No one really gave you any backstory, explained anything really in detail. There was no real narrative. Then came
right. Not a core narrative anyway. There's no main story quest to follow at all.
It was really just the quests would at best set up the world. They would explain to you kind of what the world looks like at this very moment in time. Then you have Cataclysm to Warlords of Draenor that really sort of tries to strike a little bit more of a balance. It's still mostly world building, but every once in a while there will be some quests that try to, at least in World of Warcraft's very limited way, be a little bit more narrative driven. So Mist of Pandaria, the Rathian questline, that whole legendary questline is one of them that comes to mind. It's a lot more narrative driven, even though it takes place over multiple weeks, months actually. It's clearly trying to take you along a journey, narratively speaking, towards an end goal. But for the most part, it's still just mostly world building. And then Legion is sort of the culmination of both of these in perfect harmony with each other, where there is a lot of narrative in Legion and also a lot of lore and world building, but it's still, I don't know how they did it, but they just managed to strike it perfectly. And
I think it's... Oh, sorry.
No, I just wanted to finish and say the last period that we've been in now till Dragonflight is what I call the failed period, where they leaned so heavily into narrative, right? Where they promise there will never be a story in the books again. The story will all happen in WoW, and it sort of doesn't really work for WoW. The narrative just doesn't feel good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so on the books. Yeah, the books. I mean, so I think I would agree with that. I think post Wrath, I would say that the reason Legion, especially, I think did such a good job of capturing that is because I think they took the figurehead of Legion and one of the most popular characters ever, of course, in Illidan, and they basically told an expansion-long story throughout the whole thing. And so I don't know if people remember this very much, but like what they did with Illidan is like the good version of what happened with Sylvanas. So they started the expansion with this Illidan storyline. His body's in prison, his soul is, lost in the nether or whatever. We gotta get it back from whoever's got it or what the fuck, and we gotta resurrect him, because if we don't, the Legion's gonna get him. And like, we went through these patches, finding out where his body was, going into the Vault of the Wardens, finding the Zira thing, the Light's Heart, you know, trying to fulfill the prophecy in that regard. And then all the way through the patches, it's still occurring. Illidan is
Yeah.
like still. So I felt like what they did was they did a good job of world building with like the storylines that happened in each like individual zone. Like Val Shara is one that comes to mind big time.
Yeah.
And Asuna is another one. I mean, all of those zones were individually really good, but
Oh,
they
yeah.
still captured the overarching narrative that was occurring with Illidan and found ways to tie the narratives, the smaller like world building and like lore kind of stuff in with that narrative.
Yes.
And I feel like what happened with Shadowlands is they failed to do that. And they leaned completely into, not completely, but way more into something like Sylvanas's narrative without really like doing a good enough job at like linking those zone-based storylines to like Sylvanas's motivations or what's occurring with her. Like it's there, but it's not, it's just not as, it felt like everything with her was like more behind the scenes. And then you get the culmination at the end, you're like, what the fuck is this? And then you get to Dragonflight. And I think Dragonflight is very, very interesting because Dragonflight has several vessels for storytelling that are like kind of optional and separate, like time rifts, but have like such insane like world building like implications just based on their text alone. So Dragonflight is like, I felt like they tried to go with like a very specific like dragon based narrative. And I think in doing so, they focused kind of so much on it that they maybe kind of lost a little bit of the scope of like the world building and kind of the interconnectivity between all those different facets. And it felt like we kind of focused so much on dragons that that's like literally all the expansion was. And obviously we learned a shitload about the Titans. We learned more about the old gods, and that stuff is still occurring. But I hear what you're saying. I think Dragonflight suffered a lot because I just don't think that the narrative was set up in a way that interests a lot of people. Like,
True.
Oh, dragons, pretty Alexstrasza dragon. It's like, cool. We've kind of done this in some ways before. The biggest draw would be the Dragon Isles, and unfortunately, I felt like the cinematic that they opened with just kind of didn't really like.
I mean, that was a wet fucking
draw people
noodle.
in.
Dude, that was Chaos Bolt from the start of Legion. Like, if you remember Chaos Bolt at the start of Legion, that was that cinematic.
Hit like 200k. Yeah, it's tough, and I agree. So I know that was a long-winded way of kind of. I do agree with you, and that's kind of the way that I see some of those things occurring in line with your view.
Yeah. So to sort of make it, to bring it together, what WoW always did during the first two periods of WoW, the rule set and the rule set light, was the narrative or the lore world building that happens in the game. If you want the narrative, it's books, right? You have to buy the novels, and that's where they go into, like, for example, Wrath of the Lich King. You get sort of a broad highlight view of what's going on in the world, but if you're not reading Age of Night, if you're not reading Arthas, you're not entirely going to be sure of every single thing that happened there, right? And the whole world and how all of this played into everything else.
Right.
And that was obviously a complaint. A lot of us complained, and this is why I said I will take a lot of blame for this, because I was one of those people that complained and said, look, if I'm going to be buying every single expansion and I'm going to be paying $15 a month, I want the fucking story in the game. I shouldn't have to buy a bunch of books outside the game.
Tell me about it.
Blizzard started listening, right? They were like, okay, we'll stop putting the story outside of the game. We'll put it into the game. But here's the problem. WoW was never built to do that. If you want to,
unfortunately, that's the truth.
Yeah, it's a gameplay first game, right? Look at Final Fantasy. Now, I haven't played as much as you, granted, but I know for a fact there were entire streams where I barely once engaged in combat, where I'm just running to this NPC, talking to this NPC, they send me to this NPC, and I talk to, and it's amazing, right? Because I care about the story, I'm deeply involved in it, I want to know what happens next, but there's no gameplay.
Right, and I think like one of the things that Final Fantasy did especially well is they find a way to take those concepts that WoW has in its books and they actually explain them in the game.
Yeah.
So like once you get to Shadowbringers, you have this big explanation of the astral and umbral polarities and how that affects the elements and stuff. And like you have this big revelation about what that means. And I feel like in World of Warcraft, they have the world building set for all of that, but no one in the game talks about it. Like,
Yeah.
nobody acknowledges it. Like, it's like all left to the player. It seems that the in-game characters are very much ignorant of what is truly going on.
Completely fucking unaware of the explosions happening right behind them.
Bro, Anduin and Thrall are standing in Xal'atath looking at a big sword.
Yeah.
And they're having visions of a giant flaming ball calling out to them, and they don't know who it is. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
How do they not know? Like, how do they not know? I guess from their perspective, like, how could they? But yeah, I agree. The thing is, like, I don't know that they did stop taking things. Sorry, yeah, the alleged sword. Sorry. I don't know that they did stop putting things in books, because, I mean, you have these Exploring Azeroth books, of which there are 5 of them now. I can't even keep up with them. I have 4 of them. I can't do any on the 5th yet.
After speaking to Noble, you should try and talk to Noble. He's quite triggered about that exact thing. Do you know how many things those books get wrong? Just like straight up wrong. Like, it's not even in the game. The game's lore and the book's lore is not even the same. But anyways, I just wanted to have that as a bit of a side. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd have to see what that's referring to. Like, there's definitely additional stuff. However, like, you gotta. One thing that they've made pretty clear, I think, since that BlizzCon where Steve Denuser spoke about Chronicle, I think they've made it pretty clear that these books are written in perspective. I mean, these Exploring Azeroth books, like, they're written from the perspective of like
Titans or someone that works for the Titans.
No. It's very no. Well, that's Chronicle. These other books, these exploring books, these are written from Flynn Fairwind or whatever. From like Matthias Shaw. Like, these are in-game universe characters. So like, one thing that I would kind of hope that Noble would realize is that they don't have all the information. they don't know.
I don't think he does.
Speculating.
Because me and him actually had this exact disagreement about this, which is, I'm actually a huge fan of perspective-based storytelling.
That's how everything is, Akko. That's how the whole world is. You can't get away from it.
But you see, the thing is,
a perspective.
In World of Warcraft, for a long time, books were sort of sold almost as if they're the word of God, right? So if you read a novel, it's really the narrator just telling you what happened, and you can trust the narrator, because why would the narrator lie to you? And then Blizzard sort of...
I don't know. I feel like that's how I was able to figure out that Chronicle was being a little bit deceptive, because I don't think they are presented that way. I think that the preface for Chronicle is Chris Metzen rambling about cycles within cycles and histories, and the emphasis on the word history is like, I think they kind of laid the groundwork to kind of make it, at least in some of these. I don't know about the novels, but I know about the more encyclopedic entries like Chronicle. So, in the Dragonflight Codex, for instance, they make it pretty obvious that it's not 100% correct.
So I agree with you on the Chronicles bit, right? Especially once you started casting what's it called? There's a word for it. I can't remember the fucking word. But yeah, when you cast Suspicion on the Chronicles, I started reading it, and one of the first things that flew out at me is how there's 4 different explanations for how the Emerald Dream was built. And I was like, what the fuck? How could you...
They got a single explanation for how the Shadowlands was made.
Yeah, the Shadowlands is like, no one knows what happens there. Never mind. No one knows. You know, it's just it's
came
fine.
To being when mortals arose in the cosmos. Like, but no one. It's like, okay, that's just nicely omitted.
Yeah. So that's when I started to realize it. But if you go to the novels are all narrative. You know, there's a narrator. The narrator tells you what happens, and you just believe what the narrator says. The thing is, I'm a huge fan of perspective-based storytelling. I mean, I have almost 40 Warhammer books so far, and they're all perspective, like super perspective. The reason I like this is it allows you to never actually worry about a retcon, because you're only getting one side of the story, so they can change it if they really need to. But then I feel like it has to be made very obvious, right? It has to be obvious that this is from a perspective, especially since your novels, up until the point of Chronicles, was the word of God. And now Chronicles comes along, and someone actually showed me this the other day that I didn't even know. On the Amazon page, apparently even now still, I don't know if it's changed since then, but even now still, it basically sells this book as the complete canonical explanation for all of the history of World of Warcraft. You know, like, I think that's where people don't know that these are perspectives, and so they read something that conflicts, say for example with the game, and they immediately go, what the fuck, Blizzard just don't know their own lore. It's like, no, but like you just said there, I didn't even know these books are actually written from Flynn's perspective. But that suddenly makes a lot of the weird things make a hell of a lot more sense, because obviously how the fuck would Flynn know? He only knows what he can see.
The other book I think is like, Kalendor is Zakon, and is it fucking Zakon and Bane or something?
It's I know Zakon is involved. Yeah.
So it's and that's a key. And like the thing is if you're not really told that, if you don't really know, I think there's always a risk to run. Because on one hand, like you're saying, if you have a page that's saying that this is a canonical thing, it's like, you can't say that it's not canon, because it is canon, but it's a history given through the lens of a perspective. And I understand where the issue comes from. It's like, if that's not clear to the reader, then is the book actually gonna land like it's even supposed to?
Yeah.
So, and also, like, if you are believing that what you're reading is just flat out canon because the store page describes it as such, then it makes it really difficult when you start to see, like what you're saying, those conflictions, because it just appears as though Blizzard has this inconsistency, that they don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you know, as much as there have been hiccups in WoW's story, I don't really think that it is the case that they don't really know what they're doing. I think there's an overarching narrative that's going on. I think the sword has long been a part of that narrative, and there's a reason it's still here.
What sword?
Wow, what's the alleged sword?
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason it's still here, but yeah, it is frustrating, especially because these books are, you know, $22 to $40. Chronicle's a $40 book.
Yeah,
that's a game.
Yeah.
It's a fucking game. So, you know, if you're gonna ask people to play that, it can be frustrating. But I guess part of the thing about this is that, like, at this point, this game's been around for so long that we're not even researching like a video game narrative. We're researching, like, quite literally, like, the history of a world that exists in a video game. So I'll finish quickly with saying that I think that the perspective is, like, you know, it is the most important thing, even if that means that certain novels are, and in some instances, like the Sylvanas novel is primarily written from Sylvanas's perspective, and a lot of the like anecdotal things that come up are from her own thoughts. And so the perspective is the key.
Yeah.
It's the culmination of all the different perspectives that really allow you, I think, to kind of uncover the truth, you know, kind of maybe the nature of things. And so while I know it can be frustrating for people that just want the answer, that's, you know, that's not how life works. You know, it's just
that
not.
is true.
We're talking about a game in which we're theorizing about the mysteries of its universe. You know, the nature of that discussion is one of hyperbole and hypothesis and the unknown. And so, you know, everything, as someone pointed out in my chat, most of the history that we've got has been Titan influenced in some way. And so, like, as you said, when we have that kind of veil pulled off of our eyes a little bit, we can start to see that we were maybe blinded by one or two particular perspectives.
Yeah.
And that when we zoom out and start to consider the position and perspective of these other things, forces, peoples, places, things, whatever, that there's a grander image there. So
I fundamentally agree with you. I just think the WoW player base is going to need time to adapt to this new sort of way of telling stories. The fact that because I've always thought, if you're gonna have a living, breathing world, so it's not like a Lord of the Rings where there was gonna be an end at some point, right? This is a world that hopefully is gonna continue for the next 60 years or whatever. You can't really do absolute canonical concepts too often, because at some point you're gonna get into a corner where 40 years ago you wrote something and now you're going, fuck, like, I can't do anything because I either retcon the shit out of this or I just never tell the story because, you know, fuck. Whereas perspectives kind of help you fix that, because now if there is room for it, you could just fix that, or you could just change the perspective and suddenly players see the whole truth. In Warhammer 40k they have this sort of saying, which is, everything in Warhammer is true, but not everything is canon. So I think WoW players will eventually have to accept a sort of similar mantra, which is if someone says something to you in a book, that's true for right now, or at least from their perspective, that is true. But that doesn't mean that that is actually what happened. It just means that that is how they saw it happen. And I feel like that also opens a lot more room for speculation, a lot more room for fun conversation. Because, you know, if it's just canonical, then what the hell can you speculate on, right? Like, they've told you this is what it is, and then that's it. And if that was true, then you and I would have to accept 100% that the Emerald Dream was made in 4 completely different fucking ways, and it doesn't matter. And also the Shadowlands was never made by anyone. It's just there and no one knows what's going on inside of it. Right? Because that's canon. That's the word of God. There's nothing you can do about it. That's just how it is, right? So clearly it's more fun this way. But then, sort of to finish off my period thought, I really think, and this is, I'm probably going to get crucified for this, and a lot of people, and this is where I want your opinion. I told you I want to share this with you because I want your opinion on this.
Sure. And I have not heard this, so I don't know what you're about to say.
Yeah. I kind of feel like WoW was better when it did the world building and the lore in the game, some narrative stuff, but then the most narrative stuff just goes into novels. Because I don't know if WoW's gameplay first model, the way the quest design works, the way the game operates, and the way players like to play the game, if that really can ever support a deep narrative storytelling. Because most players in WoW will not, abso-fucking-lutely not, run for 4 hours from one NPC to the other just getting story, right? Just getting some, like, people talking at them. They want to go out, collect the 10 bear asses, come back, get the next quest, go slaughter the whole world. You know, get to max level and start raiding. I would love that, but I'm sort of thinking the success of classic WoW has also kind of showed me that the amount of people that actually care about, like, really play WoW for its lore is actually not that many from a percentage perspective. Because, I mean, let's be real, Season of Discovery is fun, but it's fucking dead for lore, right? There's not much lore there. It's basically the same lore with some new bits sprinkled in between. So yeah, I kind of feel like we should probably go back and War Within to the old style. Give us the world, build the world, give us the rule sets, but then put the story, the actual story in novels. Let us just read it. It sucks, but at least it's better. What do you think?
Yeah, I just can't get behind that. I just can't. I've seen narrative in WoW unfold in ways that I think suits the game extremely well. I think the Argus campaign, even for what it was, I think is a good example of that. And the novel thing is like, people, like you pointed out, they're already asking for a lot of money. You know, they're already asking for the fee for the game, and so for people to have to like you shouldn't need to buy a 400-page novel to understand why Sylvanas did what she did. Like, the game had ample opportunity to discuss that. The monologue she had and the discussions that she had between Anduin and she, like, the opportunity for a good story is there, Akko. We can't give up on the ability for it to be told in the game just because they did a shitty job at it. That's kind of my view.
Have you played Dragonflight? You have, right?
Yeah, I've played all of it.
Yeah. You know the Vernoff thing, right? Like, I've been harping on about this for a while now. That's
her
why
story's all in a book.
Yeah, the problem with Vernoff's fucking story also is the fact that 5 minutes earlier, she tells Alexstrasza, I don't give a shit, this world will burn, fuck you all, you stole our children. And we're like, all right, this is it, right? Gonna be big war now. 5 minutes later, she's at the door going, I'm so sorry, my brother is being a complete dickhead, even though you told me 5 minutes earlier that my brother is a complete dickhead. But now I kind of want forgiveness and let's save the world, right? And it's sort of like, yes, I can understand how they got there, right? But I do need to invent a little bit of headcanon to get there. That should have been in the game, right? You should have actually taken me through her thought process, taken me through an experience with her, that brings her to finally, step to Alexstrasza and go, okay, I see what you mean. My brothers are absolutely fucking nuts, and this is going to be really, really dangerous. Now, I don't know if that maybe the reason that turned out as badly as it did is because of just maybe a change in storytelling, like maybe Maitson coming back, because I have this theory as well. Maitson, maybe the Newser wanted Viranoth to be an actual villain. Maitson came back and he was like, actually, I want that character. Bring her back to me. I have huge plans for her. And then suddenly they had to scramble to get Viranoth on the side of the aspects because, Maitson has a new plan for her. But I feel like some narrative stories work really well in WoW, like you just mentioned, right? There are some stories that absolutely pop, but then there are stories that just feel like, even when they tell it, it feels rushed. It feels like they're skipping a bunch of steps and just sort of getting to the end of the story as quickly as possible, skipping everything in the middle to get.
That's how I felt about Sylvanas' storyline, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I felt like that's kind of how that went.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the books, like War of the Scaleborn is really long. It's like fucking 36 chapters or something.
Holy shit.
And
I'm still waiting for it in
long.
South Africa, by the way. I still can't fucking get the book here.
I think I actually just got. I think I've just got mine. Actually, I think it might be in this. I got a box here I can open here on stream. Maybe this is actually. I've had these kind of sitting here for a few days because, what's the rush to open books if you don't have time to read them? Well, this is the Dragonflight Codex. Actually, it's the one I just got.
Oh shit! I'm waiting for that one too.
This one, bro, literally at the very end, like this. I don't know if you know this, but in the end of this one, it actually says, something along the lines of like all this, that this is like it essentially says that it's a perspective and that right. All perspectives might be lacking info. So they're really leaning into that, I think, in the books now. Like if you are buying a World of Warcraft book now, especially something that's meant to be a more encyclopedic entry and not considering it to be like perspective, then you're probably making a mistake. Yeah, but they also, I think, are doing a lot better job of illustrating that in the book. Like they're making it very clear. But anyway, back to what you're saying. I think Viranoth is like a very weird thing because what Alexstrasza does is I mean, and maybe this makes Viranoth a bigger person than me, but like unforgivable, like absolutely unforgivable what she did. And,
I agree.
I agree. She seems so ignorant to what she has done, and throughout War of the Scaleborn, the book, really mostly what the book is it's just a book of like repeating themes that illustrate how fucking sketchy the Titans are. Like that's pretty much what the whole. Honestly, like it gives character to the dragons and stuff, but it just makes pretty much everything the Titans do out to be very, very sketchy. Like there's talks in that book about what is the subtle nature of order? Like, is order changing your mindset without you even realizing that it's doing it? Like, how much of you? It's almost like the concept of domination. Like, when you've been affected by it for so long, are you even able to realize that you're being affected by it anymore? Yeah, and that's a very scary thing. And so with Viranoth, it's like, I get that Farak was going sicko mode and all that. But it did feel in the game like very flip-floppy. And that to me, like, it doesn't matter how long and how much they set up the relationship between Viranoth and Alexstrasza, they end up putting her in prison with the other incarnates after Alexstrasza tells her that she's not gonna experiment on fucking whelps and steal them, and then does it anyway. So it's Viranoth's siding with them unless she seeks to genuinely betray them, which I don't think is going to happen because she got blessed by Azeroth, so I just kind of don't think that's going to happen at this point. It's very weird. It is very weird, and so I can see your perspective of like, how did they somehow make this come back around? And I think the problem is that the part of the story that they told about Viranoth's like reintroduction and how she would kind of come to side with the aspects, it's in the way that it's handled in the book is just not nearly as detailed and nuanced as they handle it in the game. And I just think that if you can't, it sucks. Cause like what you're saying, I totally get what you're saying about like, put the narrative in the books because they have that strength. And the game itself in its format maybe doesn't support that. So I hear that. It's just so hard for me to like agree with,
Oh,
just because I want so badly. I just feel that there is a universe in which
mhm.
like they have the means to like tell some of these stories in the game, and they just
I
haven't done it.
I absolutely agree with you. I'm not suggesting this because I'm,
This is what you
I
want.
like spending money on useless shit, right? I love, yeah, of course, $15 a month plus 20, 40, 50, $60 a year. Why not? That's perfectly fun for me. No, of course I would prefer if everything was in the game. But if it's a choice between it's in the game and I have to headcanon the fuck out of a story just to make it make sense, and just putting it in a book so that I can actually understand what the story is saying and how you actually get from point A to point B. And there's no way for them to seemingly do it in the game because they just keep failing putting it in the game.
You just keep failing.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, just put it in the fucking book. I don't even care at this point. Just give me a story that at least makes sense. I want to know. And that's the thing that Legion did so well, because people love to say, oh, but not knowing is how you speculate. It's like, no, that's not.
No,
I can't speculate
no,
without
that's-
knowing. I need some information to start the speculation on. Because right now it's sort of like, well, I don't know what the fuck to do with this crap. I'm gonna try and put something together. And what have I done?
Hypotheses are based on logic and reason, not random fucking generated thoughts.
Yeah, like you could, but then you'd be more like a
could.
fan fiction YouTuber.
Exactly.
You're not a
You're not
speculator.
grounding yourself in exactly. You're not anchoring yourself in like in evidence or that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I feel like in Legion, no matter what theory you wanted to come up with, you could find like 4 or 5 different hooks in the story to attach to your theory and make that theory make sense, depending on how you chose the lore that you were going with. Whereas I've watched a couple of theory, like, sort of speculators on YouTube, and what they'll do nowadays is they'll take one lore hook and then just invent an entire story on it. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
that's really
yeah, I've
cool.
seen that.
The editing is amazing.
It is cool.
But that's fan fiction, right? You're not speculating. And I guess I could become a
You
fan
start
fiction
with the
writer.
concept, and then everything after is like just something that sounds cool, and that's
Yeah.
cool. But
Yeah, but it's not quite what I enjoy, right? I enjoy thinking about what it potentially could be, rather than just whatever the fuck I feel.
yeah, lightbound Urel theories. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's honestly more substance in a lightbound Urel theory, considering what we see in the Maghar Orc scenario. There's a lot of implication of what they're doing there.
Yeah.
I think that there's even more than that. Than Elune is the sister of the Winter Queen, and so this is like everything that is Elune. It's like it's a lot, and it's various like presumptuous and that, and it's fun, and that's I don't have a problem with it. So yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, but yeah, it's like where's the evidence to support what you're saying?
Yeah.
Like I have a pretty insane theory right now about one of the most unknown gods in World of Warcraft. And
should we ask, or do you want to keep that for a banger video?
I mean, I've talked about it multiple times on stream, so it's not like it's a big secret. But I think that Anshe, is somebody that we know, that we've seen. But I think he's sisters with Elune, and I think that he has a lot of connections with Elune. And
I have a similar theory over who Anshe may be, but
yeah,
I've not given it a million hours worth of thought yet.
When I read the Falcon Fairy Tale of Azeroth book, and I read the Eyes of the Earth Mother, and I read the Embrace. Did you know Anshe is described as being very arrogant, prideful, loving himself, such so that he does not need a family. Therefore, he is alone, and that he is radiant and on fire and angry all the time, and that he's gigantic, and that when Elune gets close to him, she turns red and gets mad. And
wait, what the fuck?
If people don't see Sargeras as the literal missing sun god, I don't know who else it is because this motherfucker has innumerable links to Elune. Like, I don't
Yeah, I
know,
mean,
the Temple of Elune and the fucking Tomb of Sargeras being on top of one another.
mhm.
Like, it says in that book, the Earth Mother tells Anshe because he gets wounded by darkness and begins bleeding eternally. Which is what happened to Ragnaros, by the way. Or not Ragnaros, that's what happened to Odin, by the way. He allegedly got wounded and now his beard bleeds eternally as a wound on his face.
Yeah.
That Musha would be Anshe's secret power, and that no one was supposed to know that she was secretly working with him.
Oh, shit.
And when you look at the Night Elven Empire and some of the other things that have happened that maybe Elune may have allowed to happen, now we have in the game, we have this hidden Warglaive quest about fell magic where it's revealed that perhaps Elune is not so opposed to fell magic.
Yeah.
It's like, like, you look at Malfurion and Illidan, one which was born with golden eyes and ended up going the way of demons, and one which was born with silver eyes and ended up going the way of druidism in the dream.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of, and some of these might be seen as anecdotal, circumstantial, and they are. And so that's why I haven't put the video out, because I need to be able to connect these dots rather than just pointing the dots out.
Yeah.
I need to be able to show people how they make sense. And so I've been working on my first edited video. Like, I haven't edited one of my own videos in over maybe almost over a year. And so for me, it's like, it's the first time I'm really passionate about this one. Like, if this is true, then that means Sargeras and Elune are both twin children of the Earth Mother. And if the Earth Mother is Azeroth and she is like all creation, then that means light and shadow in the form of Sargeras and Elune were born from the Earth Mother. Like, there's a lot of implications that follow there, and there's a lot of potential for like some of the secrets of the Burning Legion as well.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff there, but yeah, that's
I would
off topic, but yeah.
I would throw something at you in the same vein. Because just to sort of maybe give you a little bit of like a different perspective on this. There's definitely something is very wrong with the known power structures of our world. You look at the Eternal Ones, for example, meant to be this pantheon of death, and they have this one sort of separate one, Donathrius, that seemingly doesn't operate like any of the others. You have that entire quest line in Shadowlands where you see the Necrolords actually spying on a demonic world, and what they're telling you is, oh, they're just spying to make sure that they don't attack the Shadowlands. And it's like, well, what if that's not actually why they're spying? What if there's actually something much deeper going on there? And then you look at the Pantheon, the oldest known power structure that we have in our world. Aeonor doesn't fit on that Pantheon. She is clearly of life, right? She has power over life. She can create life. Why is she on a Pantheon of order? So that sort of just, if you put that aside, I think I've cracked something about the birth of our universe, and it was after watching your reaction to my video. Putting the first ones a little bit in the front and center here. We have two, in my opinion, there are only two true titans of the universe. That is Azeroth and Argus. Because it's the only two titans that we know of that was actually inside planets. The others claim that they were, but we have no fucking evidence. Like, it literally source, trust me, bro. I was also in a planet once upon a time, right? And
well, to be fair, go ahead, finish.
Now, if you look at it, Azeroth is creator, creates life. She's connected to the Emerald Dream. Some may say maker. Argus, unmaker. In other words, the start and the end of life, of the cycle. The cycle begins with Azeroth and ends with Argus. The Titans move in, and in order to corrupt this system, I think the first ones, I think Argus and Azeroth may at one point have been the same thing. They were actually one being. The first ones came
I
in,
agree.
ripped them apart, placed them far apart from one another, and then had their minions enslave these two elements of the galaxy insofar as to gain control of the system, from whom I have no idea, but I think that's what happened. And the reason I think, because this is where your reaction came in, I said in the video that Sargeras soared inside the planet because he wanted to put a part of himself inside Azeroth. But what if what he was putting inside of Azeroth wasn't a part of himself? It was a part of Argus. That's why when Argus speaks, he sounds stupid as fuck. Like, he literally sounds like the slowest kid in the class. He can barely string a sentence together. And because most of him is missing, because Sargeras was busy rebuilding the original sort of engine of the world, so to speak, right? The thing that everything revolves around.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think so. I think that they are a supreme being as one, melded together. Like I said in the reaction to your video, I definitely think that the sword is a reverse Mournblade. I think it is built and engineered to put a soul back together, not to break it apart.
Yes.
I think that the Titan Pantheon probably got Sargeras to cause the damage in the first place. And so I think Sargeras may see part of his penance for what has happened is that he must make it right. And if that is in what we perceive from our perspective as some horrible, horrific act, like we just talked about earlier, perspective is so important. Because it's so easy to see this sword as merely a means of doom and destruction, and to kind of not allow yourself to witness what's happening beneath it because you're so enthralled by what it is. So yeah, I do think that they were, and whether or not they were divided as a result of Azeroth's own will, or if their soul was split by maybe the most large, powerful Mournblade ever created, I think that one's more likely. I think that, that's probably what was able to sever the blue part of Argus from Azeroth. I mean, when you look at Uther the Lightbringer's soul being split by Arthas, it's white, and then when he splits it, it turns 1/2 blue and 1/2 gold. So you look at Azerite, and you look at the sword, and right down where the sword is stabbing in, you have a very, very bright white, animation, and then the blue and gold. So, and then there's the book. The book. What I think books should give is, I don't know. I'm always so conflicted about this because in the Before the Storm book, Sylvanas holds Azerite, and she feels as though she is a goddess of creation and destruction.
She literally sees a vision of herself bringing peace, uniting the world, not bringing peace. Anduin is the one that sees himself bringing peace to the world. She sees herself uniting the world and being the queen of the world, right? So yeah, there's clearly something to Azerite.
Well, in what Sylvanas kind of recognizes when she's holding it is, it says, paraphrased, of course, she felt as though she was a goddess of creation and destruction, and she had never understood how deeply those two were intertwined. And so Sylvanas allegedly, in that situation, came to realize that, like, creation and destruction, similar to life and death, are not separate things. They are bound together in a permanent cycle. And if you dismantle that cycle, like perhaps what the Titans did, or what someone, first ones or whoever did, if Argus and Azeroth aren't the first ones themselves, then what does that do? And how does this happen? I mean, if it's all built on perspectives, the Titans might think that they're doing the right thing. They might legit think that they're doing the right thing, and they're not.
I mean, the Titans are just as mind controlled as everyone else, because in the in-game books, they literally say that the mortals should not know about Zeroth Ordis because our small minds would not be able to understand it. Which means Zeroth Mortis, Zeroth Ordis, the Titans were also created inside a First One's lab, effectively, right? And they were influenced the same way, right?
Well, I think that one thing that could be there is, like, think about this. If we want to talk about, like, fractals, a repeating story and stuff like that. Think about, like, what happened in Shadowlands. So, like, if you take the Primus, who's one of the guys who's, like, supposed to be a good guy, who we all know fucking framed his brother, or at least helped imprison his brother,
Yep.
and then used the dominating power that he allegedly invented to fucking further his own goals. Right? We know that he knew that Zereth Mortis was a thing. We know that he knew Korthia was a thing, and we knew that we would eventually get led there. This motherfucker was part of the reason why it all happened.
Yeah.
So the whole concept of the Eternals going into Zereth Mortis and why it's forbidden, of course, I would assume is because accessing the realm of your own making, maybe not the best thing for the cosmos. And the reason why is because here's what I think. I think the Constellars are beings from, if the Zereths are canonical and the Chris Metzen's and that's all gonna stay the thing, and it seems like it is.
Yeah.
Then the possibility of the Titans having done the same thing that Zoval and the Primus did is immensely fucking high. Think about the fact that Norgannon, who shares his naming scheme with every Constellar in the game, Harboron, Elegon, Algalon, fucking Rygelon, Norgannon, they all take this celestial appearance. And when you see the Titan Pantheon all appear on the seat of the Pantheon, they all take the exact same orderly structure.
Yeah.
What I think is possible is that perhaps similarly to how Zoval was going to allegedly use all of the Zereths, because the one Zereth Mortis would cascade into all other Zereths, being fueled by just Azerite alone, which is insane.
Yeah.
Like, that just gives away the first one's thing, in my opinion.
True.
The fact that you can use Azerite to power not one, but all 6 Cosmic Forges is like, come on. Like, if she's not the creator, I don't know what is. But the point is that if Zoval can do that, then is it conceptually that much of a stretch of the imagination at all to think that perhaps the Titans visited their own realm of creation, Zereth Ortis, and perhaps committed some blasphemy and maybe reforged themselves? I mean, it would not be the first time that Titans take something from its original state and transform it into something else.
I mean, the danger, especially for not so much with Foul, Void, and Life, because they are considered to be the more entropic forces of the cosmology, but the danger with Order, Death, and Light is that if you believe that you are on the side of right, so you are actually trying to do the right thing, then suddenly you can start really justifying a lot of bullshit, right? Because, I'm about to do the one thing that I'm not allowed to do, but I need to do this in order to, I need to kill a million people.
To save life.
Yeah, right? So, because I believe that I'm a warrior of justice. I'm the order god. I'm bringing order to the galaxy. And so it's easier for me to justify a lot of evil shit, because ultimately the ends justify the means.
And I think...
No, go. I wanted to say, you triggered me so hard with the Sylvanas reminder. Not you specifically, but I immediately saw Denuzer's face. And I was like, motherfucker, this guy destroyed it so much. Because no one can tell me that Sylvanas touches the Azerite, and then after that, there is a marked change in her character. Like, she goes from before touching the Azerite, not wanting anything to do with being the war chief. She wants to go back to Undercity, touches the Azerite, and now suddenly on a mission. And then in Shadowlands, the Denuzer's like...
And do you know why? You know why, right?
Well,
they put that in this Sylvanas novel, bro. That's why the novels piss me off, because in the novel, the jailer tells her prophecies, and so when she's seeing these prophecies come true, one of which is Azerite, it's like it's clicking in her brain, like, oh, this guy's for real, he's really doing this, like. And so she did start acting like that, but they didn't put that in the fucking game. So how are you supposed to know?
I haven't even read the Sylvanas novel yet. I have it here on my thing. I've been so busy with Warhammer. I have not touched that novel yet.
It's huge, dude. It's 400 plus pages. It's the biggest. I don't know if people realize this. It's the largest WoW novel. It is the biggest one.
I personally, I still don't buy it. Just FYI, because I genuinely, it feels like they were retroactive. Because if people don't know, the Sylvanas novel was also delayed quite a bit.
I didn't know that.
It was delayed by almost a year. So I'm convinced it was delayed because of rewrites. They realized that they were basically going to change the whole story of Sylvanas, Because I don't believe, if you look at everything that happens leading up to Shadowlands, and then you look at Sylvanas' actual actions in Shadowlands, it's like, what the fuck? This girl is bipolar. Like, she just, like, multiple personalities here. She goes from wanting, like, seemingly at least, wanting to set everyone free. She even tells the Horde players that chose loyalty, when next you see me, you will understand, to being like, actually, never mind, I'm just, you know, a blindless, mindless follower of Zuval. Nipple.
Yeah, that being a nothing burger really pissed me off. And especially because we were all speculating. Remember back in the Legion days when she did the whole soul cage thing with Ayer, and we're like, yo, she's trying to like, she's trying to save the Forsaken. Maybe she becomes the new queen of the Valkyr. Like, we had all these crazy ideas for her, and then it just fell flat. And could I give my opinion on how they should have done the Sylvanas situation?
Dude, go for it.
Honestly, I think up until the I will never serve thing, I'm honestly fine with most of what she did. I think the problem with Sylvanas is that they built a relationship between she and Anduin that was in Before the Storm, that was in Shadows Rising, and that was in the media leading up to Shadowlands as well.
Yeah.
And in Shadowlands, where like she has this empathy for Anduin. There's something about Anduin that touches Sylvanas on a personal level. And it might be because of his connection to Varian, but I think more so it's because he's very similar to Arthas. So I think in many ways Sylvanas was kind of scared of Anduin and scared of what he could become. And maybe to an extent he even reminds her of her lost brother, Lyrath. So maybe there's that as well. But the key, I think, is they had this opportunity where we knew that Mournblades could sever a soul in half. We found out that the Jailer had the other half, part of her soul.
Yeah.
We find out that the Jailer uses Arthas' soul to craft a Mournblade to dominate Anduin. But what I think they should have done, personally, I think they should have forged Kingsmorn with the other half of Sylvanas' soul. That's what I think they should have done. And I think they should have went the route, instead of some corny ass line of, oh, I will never serve. It should have been Sylvanas' guilt getting to her, and her realizing that what she was doing to Anduin was not right, and turning against that. And in doing so, I think it would have been sick if, like, well, I don't know. I think they should have done a self-sacrifice moment where Sylvanas gave herself, and in doing so, she sets Anduin free. And unknowingly, because you can't know that you're gonna get the reward, otherwise the meaning's not as much, right? You gotta be virtuous for the sake of it. As a result, when the sword shatters, that part of her soul is returned to her, and Sylvanas is basically like granted a little bit of a blessing for the fact that she maybe put herself on the line to save Anduin.
Yeah.
But the nuance just wasn't there. Like, there's no, like, they developed this whole relationship and then they just shit all over it because they wanted to use Arthas as the way to tell the story, and that was the biggest mistake. Well,
the relationship building also doesn't make sense at all. I just want to point out one thing: you missed the most important part of it, and that is that they ended up calling it Kingsmorn instead of Shalamorn, which is clearly a much better fucking name for the sword. But never mind that. The problem is, right? So she's building this relationship with Anduin, and those cinematics are some of the actual best cinematics,
they're really
lore-wise, for World of Warcraft. That conversation between...
If you watch them in a row, they're really good.
Oh, they're amazing. Like, because you can see the effect that she is having on Anduin. He's starting to question himself as well a little bit, but also his words is piercing her, right? It's making a difference to her. And then they go and they say, well, actually, she lost her empathy and her sympathy and her human part because it was taken by Arthas. And it's like, well, then what the fuck was the sympathy and the empathy that she experienced while talking to Anduin? Because if she was this psychotic, mindless drone that just wanted to do evil stuff, those conversations with Anduin would have been very different. Right? It doesn't matter how emotional you try to appear to a psychopath. The psychopath isn't going to have a sort of inward moment going, is it okay for me to slaughter people? Like, they don't give a shit, right? They're incapable of experiencing empathy. So there would be no connection. Which means, did you just forget what you were writing? Like, how did we get to the whole I will never serve thing? And then you grant the soul, but it doesn't match, right? And also, the soul part is supposed... No, it doesn't feel earned, and you can tell by the way players reacted to it, right? Because this is the moment where the player base needs to now forgive Sylvanas, but forgiveness can only happen with sacrifice. I need to, like, she needed to be the one to earn that forgiveness from the player base, but she didn't. He just, yanked the soul back into her, and then she went to sleep for a bit, and then Blue Uther came around, and he was like, no, actually, we know what happened to her. No worries. And the player base was sort of like, fuck her.
Sorry.
No, go.
Yeah, the thing that pisses me off the most about it is what they did afterwards with her is so good. I can't, and I don't mean the Tyrande thing. I mean when she couldn't wake up because her soul was in conflict with itself. Even though she had that return to her, the fact that she still had this war within, so to speak, that she was fighting, it's so important. It's so important. It pisses me off. Like, what are you doing? Like, it should have hit way more in the feels. And I think, I don't know, with the Arthas stuff, it's like Arthas could have been, if you're gonna use him, fucking use him. Don't do this half-ass bullshit where he has no dialogue and he's basically not even a fucking character. Like, if you're gonna pull the card, do it. Yep. Don't be a bitch about it.
Well,
like,
can we just talk about that for a second? Because I remember the BlizzCon. I can't remember if it was the BlizzCon that you were at and you actually uploaded this mobile video of you reacting to them finally confirming that the Chronicles is actually written from the perspective of the Titans, or if it's another one.
But that serve the Titans,
They asked the newser straight up, will we see Arthas in the Shadowlands? And the newser was like, I can't tell you guys, but what I can say, he's such an iconic part of the game that if we're going to use him, we'd have to make sure that we do him justice. 35 anima fucking later, and you're like, dude, what? Like, what?
Be gone, Arthas.
It's just like, and then how do you have Sylvanas be the one to deliver the final lines to Arthas? How not Jaina? Right? How is that not Jaina?
Got Jaina and Uther as well, and neither of them say a fucking word.
They just stand there as if they don't know who the fuck this is. It's like, well, know.
Uther's the one that points it out. Uther says, I think it's Uther that says, oh, the last Arthas or some bullshit, and then it just felt very unearned. It's like, Sylvanas, you needed to have done something extremely benevolent in order to be fucking talking like this right now. Like, and I think it's very difficult because when you look at like her internal struggle, it's relatable. Like, if you relate it to like just kind of, obviously Sylvanas is the most extreme case with the things that she's done, but if you look at just kind of like mental health struggles and stuff, Sylvanas is a good representation of that. And it's one of those things where you're trying to look at it of like when your mind is altered or it's when it's working in such a way and you're not capable of these types of thoughts. But then, like you said, then if she's not capable, then why is she exhibiting these thoughts and behaviors and emotions when interacting with Anduin? And don't get me wrong, I think her worst emotions got the best of her almost every single time. Like in the Arathi Highlands at Stromgarde, when they're doing the meeting between the Forsaken and the survivors of Lordaeron that lived in Stormwind. And Sylvanas basically, I think in a similar way at Teldrassil, it comes off like she's just kind of maniacally acting for no reason, but I think Sylvanas is actually acting a lot out of fear. And I think that her fear internally manifests as rage, and so she comes off as furious a lot of the time. Because she can't confront herself. She doesn't have it inside of her to do it. And I can only imagine like what that existence feels like. And so to put myself in those shoes, it's immensely difficult. You find some type of otherworldly being at the moment of your death who you make a bargain with to basically bring about, a higher purpose. Someone like Sylvanas, who maybe is kind of, after the death of Arthas, kind of really feeling like she literally has no purpose at all. I get it, but it's just the fact that when this all happens and the only way that you can know about it is because you learn about it in a book years later, is just not really the appropriate way to tell that story.
No, I fundamentally agree with you. I feel like I have this theory that a lot of this was rewritten. Because Alex Frisiabi
delays, that makes sense.
And Denuzer had a new plan,
Oh, you mean
right?
the whole story?
Yeah, not the
Yeah.
whole story. I
Yeah.
think the story was supposed to be. So if you allow me to venture into this, I think
Sure.
the story was meant to be, because Sylvanas says to the loyalists, "When next you see me, you will understand." I think Sylvanas
Right.
was literally trying to tell us, to show us that our entire universe, everything that we believe, is built on a fucking lie. Like, none of this is real. We're being controlled by these godlike beings that are basically playing with our lives. Because if you go through the Shadowlands and you actually look, like the first realm we go to, Bastion, dude, that is a very eerie and evil fucking realm. They take their memories, they turn them into slaves, and then if you fail, they send you to re-education camp so that you can be re-educated, so that they can then take your memories and turn you into a slave. Right? Like, the whole thing is just so bizarre. And I think the idea was that Sylvanas knew she couldn't just come to us and be like, "Hey guys, we need to go into this other realm and go kick some ass over yonder." Because everyone would have been like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, why are we going to go there?" So she needed to act. If you go into the cinematic, she says, "And I will set us all free," right? And she breaks it.
Mhm.
She could have killed Bolvar there. She had Bolvar in her sight. She could literally have killed him right there. Why doesn't she? Why not kill him? If really your plan is to go absolute schizo and just destroy the universe, unmake everything, or dominate everything, then why would you not kill Bolvar right there? She leaves
Maybe the
him
jailer
alive.
didn't want her to. I mean, Bolvar, if you think about it this way, think about like
Mhm.
kind of like the prophecy shit that the Primus set up because he knew that this is all going to happen because he's the one orchestrating it, obviously.
Yeah.
So like, if you think about it this way, Bolvar in some of his actions, as cringe and boring as Bolvar is, he was kind of necessary. I feel like he kind of needed to be around. And Bolvar, I think, was also instrumental in us forging the Crown of Wills, which was ultimately, I think, the Primus's like final goal. But I get like, but again, if it's not going to be illustrated to you of like why, then it's kind of like the logic that would be kind of applied to the situation based on what we know already kind of falls short because it's based around something that we don't have the information on, and it's like, well, what the fuck are?
Yeah, it's not explained, right? It's not explained. So yeah, you and I can sit here and we can sort of go, well, actually, maybe if you do this, this, and this, and that's perfectly fine. But you know, that should be in the story so that I don't have to go, all right, this, and this. Okay, that makes sense now. Because the biggest problem with that is you and I do this and we make sense of it. Now you make a video, say, on this. No one else necessarily agreed that that is what happened. So now you first have to start arguing about what actually happened. And then when everyone agrees with what happened, according to you, now you can start speculating on, you know, what may happen in the future. So that's just sort of going back to our original conversation about speculation is really hard when you don't have at least the foundation of, you know, what is actually happening here. It becomes very difficult to speculate. But it just feels like once Alex Frigiobi
sometimes,
was
like you said earlier,
if
you have too much, it's hard as well.
Oh,
like, if it's too outlined, then there's nothing to fucking talk about.
Yeah, I mean, like, Final Fantasy is a great example of this, right? Where speculation is almost impossible. I realized this as I was playing through it. You can't. The lore is so well explained in that fucking game. What are you going to speculate on? Basically, how fast could you potentially make a chocobo run? That's the video. That's the speculation I have for you, because I think that's the only thing that you could theoretically speculate on, because everything else is really neatly.
I did predict, and I think I only was able to do this because it's really neatly put together, like you said. Like, I predicted the entire Myths of the Realm storyline, almost entirely down to a T. Except there was one little twist at the end that I wasn't expecting, which was the Alliance raid. And that's about that universe's 12 gods and their purpose and where they came from. And I was picking up, look, I mean, that, like, there, but it's like one of the only things that you can, like, speculate on, because it's this game's lore. You know, it's part of Final Fantasy XIV's lore, whereas, like, so much of that game's lore, you have to, like, speculate on it, like I said it before we started streaming, by playing other Final Fantasy games, and, like, that might not be for everybody. So,
yeah, I mean, it's already a long
positives
game.
and negatives.
Yeah,
Yeah, dude.
But
oh my god,
you need at least the foundation, right? And that's where I think Legion was so super successful. It had a phenomenal foundation because it was effectively a continuation of the TBC storyline, which already laid a lot of the foundation. A lot of books have already been written about that period of time. Now we get into Legion. Most of the lore there is handled fantastically. And so it's so easy and dude, I remember making videos nearly every day. Like, I would wake up every day and I'd just be like, oh, fuck. I just remembered. Oh, holy shit. I need to make a video about this. Because it just came to you. I had an entire Word document filled with theories during Legion. Just like void theories and old god theories and this theories and that theories. And I would just every day add to this list of theories that I wanted to cover because the foundation was there, right?
Do you know who wrote the Whispers of Il'gynoth, by the way? The whispers that got like most of us into lore speculation?
No, who wrote those?
That was written by Steve Denuser.
Dude, I'm a little surprised, to be quite honest with you, but also not.
He wrote the N'Zoth Whispers too.
See, because
all the stuff from Il'gynoth to N'Zoth, like any of those old god whispers, he wrote that shit.
See, I don't believe, and I've made a video about this, I don't think Denuser is a bad writer. I think Denuser is a bad narrative lead designer. Because
I don't even know if that's entirely true. I think he, how do you, like, what, I mean, you mentioned a Frosty Obby, like, and I kind of cut you off, so I apologize. But
no.
How do you, I mean, if I'm in that guy's position, how am I picking up the pieces of that clusterfuck?
Yeah.
What am I doing to try to unfuck that?
You see, I think the way this happened was Mason left them with a blueprint for, I think it was 6 expansions. So that would have included Shadowlands. He left them with a blueprint. I think Alex Frisiabi went off fucking script. He sort of decided, I have a better idea, let's go. That doesn't mean it was a good idea, it was just his idea. Denuser came back in and you saw Denuser's work in Dragonflight. And the problem with narrative design is just because you're a great storyteller doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great narrative designer. And
true, because how it's presented in the context of a video game is much different than just writing a story.
Yeah, because if you're a narrative designer, like the lead narrative designer of World of Warcraft, you have to keep track of the entire universe and how everything is going to fit together and where things are going to fit together. It's not just about writing a cool story. And I feel like Mason was really the last guy at Blizzard that could do this. It was like he understood his universe so well that he could just make the shit go. And then, you get the narrative guys to write the actual stories in between, but he would give them the blueprints of where to go. And I've always thought that when you read even Denuser's books that he's had a hand in writing, they're really good. Like, he's actually a really good writer. I enjoy his work.
Yeah, I've read the short stories too. I don't mind any of his short stories. And this is something that my editor and I, Jay, have talked about too, that like Steve, I freaked out pretty publicly, I think more than anyone else about, Steve and the narrative and stuff like that. And I feel a little bad. I hope that my fucking freak out didn't contribute to him, not being there anymore. Unfortunately, I feel like maybe at least some way it did, but like, it wasn't just me, obviously, but
I mean, I attacked him weekly, so it may have been me.
I mean,
I was always angry at him.
Yet at the same time, it's like, yeah, I mean, I think that the concept, like conceptually, the first ones are like is a sick concept, like the harmony and like the duality of like the cosmos and like not really having the like. Have you read like the Cypher lore codex entries from Zereth Mortis about like reflections on reality and shit?
I think I have, but I can't remember now. Like, I can't remember what it says, but I read a bunch of shit during Shadowlands.
So like one of them is like variations on actualization. This is straight out of Zereth Mortis. It's one of the meditations on the creations of the first ones. It says, when does an idea truly become its own individual? Every one of us is carefully created, structured, and meant to serve, blah, blah, blah. Each line painstakingly put together. When is the line distinct from the design? And I think that like conceptually, that's really cool. I like going in that direction, but is it established in really like any other capacity before those moments? Not really. And so the first ones feel extremely jarring and like really difficult to where to put them. You know, if they're these progenitors of the cosmos and they're not Azeroth and Argus, I really genuinely don't know what they are. And that's frustrating because that has happened so seldomly throughout our time spent doing like speculation, like that you can't place something. Like, where does this actually fucking go? And I guess since the introduction of them and the continuation of them being in the story, it's definitely opened the door, but at the same time, like, is it really built on the same foundations of what Metzen originally wrote? And I would just, I don't think that we'll ever get the answer to this question, but I would love to be able to ask, like, look, you know, I know this is a tough question, but, you know, how much, you know, it's even a hard question to formulate. Like, how much did the expansions like Shadowlands deviate from your original ideas? You know, are things like the first ones something that, you know, you had considered and will continue to consider canonically in the universe of the game? Like, and if, you know, I just worry about that it's like the Halo kind of treatment of like, you just got to be careful about climbing the ladder of power in progenitors, because like when you put too many things on the ladder, it becomes a little little convoluted.
It becomes jarring. And what you just said there, I didn't know Denuser was the writer of that, but that fucking suddenly makes a lot of things make a lot more sense, especially towards Shadowlands, because, you know, BFA was a bit of a clusterfuck. A lot of people were really unhappy, especially with the end of BFA, and it almost feels like Denuser went, right, when is the last time the players loved the story? Whispers. People love the Whispers. Fuck, even now, there's still, sometimes I read the Whispers and I go, shit! Oh, shit! Especially with new information, right? You go, fuck! Okay, I know what that means now. There's still a bunch of them that makes no fucking sense, but, you know, it was really fun, and it continues to be fun to this day. And it feels like he just started leaning so hard into that type of storytelling, where he just thought if he kept things super mysterious, people would really enjoy it. Because I remember him saying the Grimoire of the Shadowlands was, you know, if people loved speculating about the Chronicles, wait until you read the Grimoire of the Shadowlands. It's going to be a speculator's dream, I think it was his words.
Grimoire is so obvious. Grimoire's like, it's so, like, even the cosmology, it's another perspective of order. Like, we didn't even get another cosmic forces perspective. It's just another group of people who think that they're order, putting it in perspective for you. And honestly, I'm just gonna say it, all Grimoire of the Shadowlands is a fucking book that's meant to teach you things about Elune and the Winter Queen and about the Primus. The book,
pretty much.
The book, you've read it, right? You've gone through the whole thing.
I've read a lot of it. I haven't read the whole one because it's kind of boring.
If you go back and just read, it is kind of boring, and just read the Maldraxxus section, the Primus is so obviously the bad guy, like so obviously, and that's one of those story directions that I always have been curious about, is like, why the fuck did they do what they did with the Primus? Like, what the fuck? Like, it's so clear that he's actually the bad guy. I always get confused of, like, did they go back on it, or is it just that subtle storytelling?
Rewrites,
like,
dude.
Like, it very well could be, and could be why those cutscenes and stuff changed in the way that they did, with the silhouettes not matching up, or maybe the silhouettes were meant to imply something, that like the jailer was actually the Primus.
Can I give you the biggest? Can I give you the biggest bit of evidence that there were massive rewrites?
Sure.
Go look at Blizzard's original Garrosh cinematic. It is a pile of dog shit. And then Blizzard comes out with an explanation. This was done by an intern over a weekend. Okay, but why the hell? I have spoken personally to Terran Gregory on my Discord with my mods. I know for a fact that cinematics for World of Warcraft are done by the time the expansion comes out, because it takes them between 12 and 18 months to put together. So if you made this cinematic in a weekend and a fucking intern did it, clearly you were rushed, right? Like, something happened. What happened to rush this? Why was it so rushed? And then, we could extrapolate a little bit more. You come from BFA that had CGI cinematic upon CGI cinematic upon CGI cinematic, and Blizzard clearly
Really
saying,
good ones.
yeah, fucking hell, some of the best. Dude,
So many.
I'm not even an anime fan or an animation fan because, I know people are very precious about their anime. But I would watch a movie made by Blizzard with those graphics. Like, fuck yeah. Give me that movie 2 hours, I'll watch it. And then Shadowlands, none. Not a single one. Why? Why cancel all of those cinematics? Because clearly this was the direction you wanted to go with it.
The only ones that there were the ones with Sylvanas in them, basically.
Yeah.
Only pretty much like stuff with Sylvanas and Tyrande, like, and then you have to think about also like stuff that seemingly is kind of like missing from Shadowlands, like the Drust, for example.
Yep.
Like kind of just not ever fully confronting the Drust, having them built up in BFA as like one of the coolest thematic enemies that we've ever seen. Like kind of Wiccan magic is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And their magic appears extremely similarly to the way that Argus's magic looks, but like we don't go into that. And we learned that that Arden Wield was shaped and changed upon the Winter Queen's arrival, and it used to be significantly different. Is it possible that maybe they used to be there? It's riddled. It is riddled with riddles, and it's like the N'Zoth storyline. Remember with N'Zoth where we go through the instance and we're getting the whispers. The first boss is like it's literally an illusion, and it's like he's like, you tread within a vision of what was and what shall be, or whatever. And then you go further through the instance and you get to the Skedis or whatever the fucking high priest name is, and you get whispers of like, is any of this even real? And it's like, I don't know. Like, is any of this even fucking real? And then you get to the end of it and you like kill N'Zoth, and people are like, oh, N'Zoth is dead. And it's because the theme that they're trying to pull with the old gods, I hate to say it, but it's not obvious enough. Like,
true.
I still get people to this day that still come to the stream, and I don't mind it. I love people asking questions. Like, I'm not, no offense to anybody, and I'm not taking from you or anything. It doesn't bother me, but it's like people still come to the stream and saying, "Oh, Pyro, do you think the old gods are really dead? Really dead?" And I'm like, how? Like, well, how is this still a question? Like, yes, of course they're dead, but as we just had a whole expansion about, death isn't the end. Death is just a transitory thing. Like, so what does that mean for where they go and what they do? Like, yes, of course N'Zoth is still around. And then even if you look at like interviews with Steve Denuzer regarding N'Zoth, someone pressed him on that and was like, what's the deal with that? And Steve basically said, like, I think that if you assume that there's only one outcome, from this N'Zoth situation, you're kind of missing the point of what N'Zoth is trying to teach you. And I feel like it was missed. And don't get me wrong, I think that there's like a level of intellectual, like fun, deep storytelling that can exist there. And to me, someone who has spent thousands of hours researching this game, I can see what they're trying to do. But the fact of the matter is that the average player doesn't. And the reason why they don't is because they don't illustrate it well enough in the game. And that's why you get a lot of people who are like, how are the Titans bad guys? And it's like, because you haven't been reading fucking text from classic fucking WoW. Like, like it's been there the whole time that they've been not even necessarily that they're just overtly bad guys, but that they've been doing very sketchy things. Like, did anyone never run Uldaman and actually read the Discs of Norganon when they got that quest? It's so on one hand, it's a little frustrating because it feels like, if people would maybe slow down and read and take their time and really enjoy this world that they're existing in, that they could see more of it. But when the game is not designed in such a way where a quest is you getting a text box that is a fucking paragraph that you can just click accept next to, you're not designing your game in such a way narratively, and this speaks to what you were talking about, in such a way that's enjoyable. People I don't even want to do that. I get tired of reading like that.
Yeah, because basically the reason you're guaranteed to get tired from that is it is effectively just a bunch of exposition dump. It's not a conversation. They're not actually having dialogue with you. They're just dumping a shit ton of...
Your character doesn't say shit.
No, your character is the fucking mute of World of Warcraft, right? And what's more is none of the things ever really happen to your character, right? So the way I usually describe it is, in World of Warcraft, you are running through a museum filled with paintings. And you're running from one painting to the next, seeing how the landscape changes in each of these paintings. But you are very rarely the one involved in it. It doesn't happen to you, it happens to other characters. You just get to see how it plays out. You know, and that's fine if that is what you want to do. And the overwhelming majority of WoW players prefer to play the game that way. And part of the reason you have to do it this way in WoW is, unlike in Final Fantasy XIV, where you have one character and jobs are all on that one character, alt is a very real thing in WoW. You know, so you can't really take people through hours and hours of storytelling when,
it's too much.
You know, they're leveling 20, 30, 40 alts. That would be super boring. But then
this is
yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so bad about interrupting.
Dude, please fucking go. I don't mind.
On that note, like, what they should do then is that they should take like some of these important lore entries like that exist in the books and stuff, and they need to not give us some half-baked Azerothian archives or whatever.
Yeah.
They need to build a fucking library. Like, they need to literally put something in the game where we have scholars who are finally coming together and trying to fucking understand this.
Oh, I would love that.
Someone like your Urianger, who you can go to and he can explain to you, this is how the Titans saw the cosmos. This is how we can validate and verify some of what they saw. But there are some mysteries that kind of exist, and you can do so much story setup with that. Build, you know, we have Suramar. We know that they studied the stars. We have Quel'Thalas. We know they studied the stars. Everyone studies the stars. Like, why don't we ever stop and look at it? How many times have we walked into a room like Karazhan Library that has 9 different planets depicted in holograms and then a big ringed Azeroth in the middle? Like, we never talk about that stuff, even though our characters witness it with their own eyes. And so for me, I think that the answer, and it was the answer in Final Fantasy 16, and it was a lot of reading, but you know what? You can find out anything you want to know about the lore in FF16 because it's in a repository in the fucking game.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a huge missed opportunity that we don't have that. That just
Dude.
It needs to exist, because that's how you get players, not lore nerds like us who are willing to do that external work. That's how you get players to actually fucking look at it.
I have the perfect thing for him. The Lore Walker faction, led by Lore Walker Cho, and once you hit max level, he sends you on.
Dude.
Yeah, like fucking literally, the Lore Walker faction is part of the expeditions and all the rest of it, the adventure expeditions from the Horde and the Alliance. And the entire quest chain, max level, every patch you get new quests, that is for us, right? The lore nerds that
helps you understand the overarching fucking story, because otherwise it's so fragmented.
I mean, you've literally just invented the perfect go-between that removes my sort of final solution of, okay, just go back to Classic and release the fucking novels. So bring on the novels just so I can get a good story, because this is bullshit. Instead, we do what you do, or what you suggested, and it works, right? Because I will still buy the novels, because I do like reading. You know,
I'm still going to buy them. I'm a collector.
Yeah. You know, I like buying books, so when I one day fucking die, hopefully I've read all of them, but I do like buying books. So I will still buy them, but I want to play them in the game. And, I mean, Lore Walker Cho is super cool, Bran, all of these characters are super awesome, and it would be a max level activity for players like myself, like you, to engage with the lore of WoW. You know, the actual experiences of people in WoW. Having the ability to finally sort of explore some of the cultures in WoW. Like, you can go super deep on this stuff, and it's all in the game. And it doesn't affect the hardcore raiders that couldn't give two shits. I literally got triggered when I saw one of the World First raiders, when they got World First and the cinematic for Sargeras skill came up, he actually clicked it off. He literally just click exit, don't want to watch this bullshit. And he's like, bro, what the fuck? Like, you're just not going to watch a cinematic? Like, how does this work?
They saw it on normal and heroic, though. It's the same cinematic.
Yeah, but I never click off a cinematic. Like, holy shit, right? You watch a cinematic when a cinematic
If you're
pops
world
up.
first, bro, your blood is flowing, dude. You're not even thinking. Like, you got so much adrenaline. You're just closing out of everything. Your fucking skin is probably crawling. Yeah, I don't know.
True.
I get what you're saying, though.
But
It's
I'd
like,
still watch the cinematic.
When I saw that in Final Fantasy, it hurt. it hurt because you know that in FF that's how most of the stories are told, with very long cutscenes and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I can. It's a little triggering. I actually need to go back and do Sargeras because the stream that I did Aberys on, it was just not a. It was just a low energy day, not a great vibe, and so I didn't end up putting that one on YouTube. But I need to go back because Aberys was sick, and the whole Cosmic Void stuff at the end is pretty cool.
Aberys, again, I would say the one thing that World of Warcraft has not dropped the ball on is world building and lore. Right? There's still a shit ton of lore and world building and fun stuff there. It's just the narrative stuff that feels like they've not yet figured out the perfect way to tell the story. You know, like how do we want to connect the narrative and the world so that it makes sense and it's actually fun for the player base to engage in?
I felt like Dragonflight was I thought anyway that it was a little bit of a step in the right direction for that.
Yeah, I would. What I would say, just to link with you there. Sorry for interrupting. The side quests of Dragonflight were phenomenal. Like the blue dragon quest line.
Like the blue. Yes. Dude.
And the bronze. Dude, that was fucking fire.
Yes. They were so good, dude.
Yeah. I love those stories. The main story was the one that sort of made me go at times, the fuck is this? Like, why?
The only thing that I got out of it was like the fractal of Firak and recognizing that type of character. That character who's so angry and like arrogant and like determined that he separates himself from the people who are trying to help him. And for me, that obviously rings pretty true for some things that have happened in the past. But
yeah,
like that same thing happens with like Deathwing and with Sargeras. You know, that kind of fractal nature.
Yeah.
Other than that, the narrative between like I think we all agree. The coolest part of Dragonflight is Iridikron. Okay.
Oh my fuck yes.
Iridikron is easily the coolest villain that they've done forever, and that's because he's mysterious, but he doesn't hide his perspective that much. Like he's pretty open about that he doesn't like the Titans and how he doesn't like what they've done, and he's that character where you can tell he's up to no good, but at the same time you can tell he also has a very valid reason about why he is so pissed off.
Yeah, he's got layers, right? He makes you think.
Dude. He's cool.
That conversation with Chromie, right? Where I told my chat, I was like, dude, listen to how he's speaking to her. There's no hatred, no anger. He's genuinely talking to a young dragon that would not understand because she wasn't around. And he's actually trying to convince her, right, that the Titans are using you. They don't give a shit about you. They're not your friends. Dude, he's such a fucking character, man. I am so excited for Iridikron's return.
I love how he's like working alongside the Void, but not for them, and how like do you trust the Void? And he's like, I no, but I trust its hunger. Yes. And I think it's just like cool that he's able to like conceptually separate those two things, because I just think it just shows that nuance of like a character, which, and especially villains in World of Warcraft often do not get that treatment. Villains are often just so one-sided and one-dimensional.
Yes.
So yeah, I think he's really cool for that fact.
I think the thing is, there's a way that you can use one-sided villainy to a great extent, for Rack being a decent example of that, although I would argue the best example of one-dimensional villainy must be Gul'dan. This is a dude that he cares about one thing and one thing only, and that's power. He doesn't give a fuck about Sargeras' plans. He doesn't give a shit about anyone. I want power for power's sake. He doesn't even have a plan for what he's going to do with that power. As long as he has the power, he's good with it, right? And that's a brilliant example of a one-dimensional villain done really well. Then you have Sargeras, and I would put Iridikron on the level of Sargeras when it comes to villainy, because there's so many layers to that character, and that's why, even to this day, there's people like us that don't believe Sargeras is actually the villain, and other people that go, no, he is absolutely the villain. Why? Because it's so difficult to pinpoint this particular character, because he's not just the obvious burn baby burn, right? He is more of that. He has a plan, and you can clearly see he has a plan, although he's not willing to divulge the plan to you.
Yeah. No one ever really does. Only the old gods ever really do, and it's through cryptic half-truths.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's talk about, however, to kind of move a little bit forward, because we
Mhm.
discussed a lot of Shadowlands and kind of general overarching stuff. Talk about a villain that is not necessarily one-dimensional is Xal'atath.
Oh,
Um,
fucking hell. It's 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional, like, who knows with this bitch, right?
yeah, Xal'atath is so fun. She has some of the most deceptive whispers in the entire game, and obviously she's kind of being set up to be, the harbinger, kind of the
Yeah.
the bringer of something else. And it was speculated by someone in my Discord named Skiz, who kind of brought to kind of the attention a little bit, maybe, of some of Xal'atath's inspirations. So one of which would be from the Cthulhu mythos Cthulhu. And Cthulhu is the daughter of Cthulhu,
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken, and her entire role is to, in the event of the fall of Cthulhu, that she would basically bring about his resurrection.
Okay.
Um, and so there's when you look in Chronicles art, that art that shows the fifth old god thing.
Yes.
So, have you ever seen Cthulhu, or are you familiar with Cthulhu from Lovecraft stuff?
Not so much. I'm familiar with Cthulhu.
Okay.
But I'm not Cthulhu, no.
So I would set this in our messages, in our little chat right here,
Yeah.
to each other. So that's the image of Cthulhu. That's the image of the fifth old god from Chronicle. And it's described that Cthulhu is a great old one and is the youngest progeny of Cthulhu and his androgynous mate Idya. She came from the star Zoth and dwells on Earth. Cthulhu is destined to give birth to great Cthulhu again after he is destroyed in the distant future. Our Cthulhu in World of Warcraft, I think anyway, would most certainly be N'Zoth.
Yeah.
Cthulhu has the appearance of a gigantic, red-bodied, black-ringed, and six-eyed octopus with small wings. And so you look at that little fucking image out of Chronicle, and you're like,
That's
okay.
pretty much that.
That's pretty much that. He also has a deeper theory, which I think is a really good one, which is that Xal'atath is going to attempt to do this by essentially replicating Karsus' folly from like Baldur's Gate 3, or even that's
Crassus's follow.
Crassus's landing is I did the exact same thing. Don't worry, the exact same fucking thing. So basically, Karsus would essentially gather these powerful, magical artifacts, which Xal'atath is also doing right now, whether it be getting that dagger, getting that thing from Iridikron, the Dark Heart, kind of like a focusing iris, and then there's also a crown, which is typically needed. Xal'atath is seeking to either work alongside or potentially manipulate the Nerubian queen who lives down there, so perhaps her crown has something to do with it. But the idea essentially is that she will enact some type of spell, some incredibly powerful spell, to, as she kind of suggested that you do in the Temple of Elune, to usurp the power of a goddess. And that goddess would be Elune. And in doing so, she may very well break the veil that surrounds Azeroth and unleash who knows what as a result. When Karsus, when Karsus came up with his Avatar Karsus spell, it essentially allowed him to ascend to godhood and have this kind of supreme control over the weave, this magical fabric that allowed him to basically create, attempt to create his own kind of rule set for it. What happened was Karsus was absolutely destroyed. Yeah. And the goddess, I believe it was Mystra or whatever, she's reborn again, and the weave is restored. Yeah. So basically, kind of the idea perhaps right now is that Xal'atath is kind of both of these things, this kind of herald and harbinger of the return of these old ones. And in doing so, she is going to potentially dismantle Elune's position of power and bring about the Hour of Twilight, as it were. I
like that.
So that's kind of what we think about Xal'atath right now.
I mean, it would fit with my own theories on this, mainly because if we go back, and this is sort of going a little bit further back, I think, than what most, and also going to a book that a lot of people have not read, which is the Traveler series, because it is sort of more like a children's book, in all fairness. But in the Traveler series, it is made very clear that anyone that has ever tried to sail across the other side of Azeroth has not returned, right? So you can't really sail across the other side of Azeroth. Then we have the in-game books now in Dragonflight, where Azara says that, or they say that Azara has made it beyond the Umbral Veil, which, at least from what I could find, I don't find any references of the Umbral Veil anywhere in World of Warcraft. At least not that we know of. And now we also know about the War Within, and we know that there are Arathians inside the planet, but that they do not hail from the kingdom of Arathi. They actually, they're Arathians Sorry, yeah?
Yes, go ahead. You can explain.
No. You can explain.
I was going to I think so you had the original Arathi Empire. You had a splinter kingdom that essentially was born from that sailed across the ocean blue or whatever.
Yeah.
And then from that, the Arathi that we find in Hallowfall or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Those are a sect of that separated kingdom.
Yeah.
So it's like someone in my chat, Sixten said like French Canadians. Yeah, kind of. Pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. So where that other place is, that other human kingdom is, we have no idea. Then we go to the in-game book that speaks about the green dragon that flew faster than any other green dragon, and then had this dream of crossing the what was it called? The ocean. There's an ocean. They gave it a name, but it's basically like an impassable ocean.
The Veiled Sea? No.
Yeah.
It's got like lightning or something about it. I can't remember what it's called. I know what you mean though.
Yeah. Anyway, so she wanted to cross this, and everyone told her no, don't do it, and then she did, and she never returned, and she's presumed
they don't
dead.
know if she made it.
But green dragons have had
dreams.
There's green dragons that have had dreams about her on some world, and she actually has a clutch with her, which suggests that she may have made it, and that she must have met other dragons, because last time I checked, dragons do pair in order to make eggs. So if she's going to have a clutch with her, then she needs to have other dragons there. And this sort of got me thinking about, so the Titans theory story about how everything came to be is they came to Azeroth, they found the old gods, they ripped Yisaraj out of the planet, and then, obviously locked up all the others after they saw that's a very bad idea to rip old gods out of planets. But then we now also have this story where the Titans teamed up with the Sea Giants, and that it was the Sea Giants that would take dirt from the ocean floor and help the Titans build literal continents. So this suggests
raising the land from beneath the sea.
Yeah. So this suggests that the image that we have of ancient Kalimdor may not actually be what Azeroth looked like when the Titans first arrived on Azeroth.
Did you know that in Chronicle, it says when the Titans arrived, it says that Kalimdor is Azeroth's largest continent?
Oh shit! Wait, it actually says that?
Yeah, dude. I was reading back through Chronicle a couple weeks ago, and I hit that spot, and I was like, no fucking way that it says that in here. No way. It literally says in Chronicle that Kalimdor was not the only continent, but they never expand upon what that means. They never ever come back to
just
it.
a small little breadcrumb left there. But I'm gonna have to
fucking subtleties.
I'm gonna have to go back and reread all of the Chronicles, just because it's been years since I've actually read them. So
same, yeah.
I definitely need to do that.
But at least the mythos first chapter for each one is like super worth reading.
Yeah,
like
that's
first,
super
20 pages or so.
I would say I wasn't a huge fan of, I think, was it 3? 3 was a hard read. At least some chapters was fucking rough in version 3 of the Chronicles.
You excited for 4?
I am.
You're gonna get,
but also I don't know if they can match the brilliance of the first one. Like, Chronicles 1
and 2
is
are
still
really
my
fucking good.
favorite. 2 is really good. 3 was a bit of a, and I'm not sure what 4 is actually going to be, but I'm always excited for new WoW books. So I'm definitely getting that. But to get back to the theory that I have.
Yeah, sorry.
Because, no, don't fucking apologize, bro. This is how my streams go in general. I go off on some...
This is what we both do.
Yeah, I go some wild tangent, and then an hour later, I'm like, anyways, back to what I was saying.
Guess I was supposed to do this raid, by the way. Fuck.
True. So, what I'm thinking, because again, we now also have the books from Odin as well as from Tyr talking about the keepers that did not believe or buy into the story of the Titans and then left to I'm blanking on the name again. This happened last week as well. Avaloran, that's the one. Left for Avaloran, and then when the Titans sent other keepers 3 expedition fleets, none of them returned. So they were either killed or captured there. Which suggests that there's
who knows if maybe they were convinced and converted.
It's possible. But it suggests that there's some powerful fucking bullshit out there, right? That we have no idea what is going on outside of our umbral veil. And here's where I'm gonna hit you with a theory that I'm still working on. But what if the prisons of the old gods were not prisons, but in the same way that Azeroth serves as their battery, the old gods were imprisoned and served as the Umbral Veil's battery. In order to protect their little corner of order, the Titans used the old gods' essence to build this impenetrable barrier around their creation, because the sea giants helped them build these, raise these lands from the sea floor and all the rest of it. And now with all of the old gods dead, right, or at least removed from their engines, the Umbral Veil is weakening. And that's how Azara was able to escape it. Which suggests that whatever it is that the Titans were trying to keep out, maybe the 5th old god, is now going to be able to get it back in. Right? Because the Umbral Veil is going down. We've basically fucked all of their plans without even knowing it. It's for now, like I said, that's my end goal. I'm still trying to connect all of the dots going there.
I think a good way to take that maybe is the connections between Y'Shaarj and Elune. I think that's a big hint right now. The nature of Elune and maybe her essence, what she really is. I mean, if Anshe is day and light, then Elune is night and darkness. Even if she's in the pantheon of life or whatever they call it. I think Y'Shaarj is probably going to be a big key to this. I think that there's a decent chance that Elune, considering that she exhibited the power to be able to reach down and pull Ysera through the veil in the sky and kind of imprint her star pattern upon said veil, that Elune may very well be the key to how this veil is maintained. Umbral, obviously referring to night, darkness, that kind of thing, kind of pertaining to Elune, I think makes sense. Yeah. If Elune is one of the only guiding lights through the darkness, then she is probably also not afraid of the darkness. Yeah. That kind of thing. So I like what you're saying. I think the idea of the old gods being used from, I don't think they were just imprisoned. I don't think the Titans do that to anybody, actually. I think they imprison them and then they use their power. That's the key. They're always doing something, whether it's with Azeroth, whether it's using old god. Think about this. I said this in one of my recent streams. If the Titans learned that they could spread order and influence through water, then what is to say that they didn't also learn that they could spread different, corruption or whatever it might be through blood? So the concept of them using the blood of the old gods or the blood of or water to spread, whatever type of thing is certainly there. And the old god's blood clearly holds some kind of power, as Xal'atath is going around and collecting it allegedly. So
I mean, we have Gahun, where clearly the Titans did immeasurable amounts of experiments on that thing.
Yeah.
in order to effectively create almost like a mini old god, right? In effect. So the Titans are definitely not, and it sort of shows in just their actions. They're clearly not just sort of mindless followers of something. They do
No.
inquire. They're very inquisitive, and they do want to figure things out. The problem is that they come from it with a deeply held order-centric ideology. And so everything has to stay within these very narrow fields. And if something were to go outside those fields, it is immediately branded a heretic and, try to forcefully bring it back in. This is sort of, by the way, my claim. The Curse of Flesh?
Mm-hmm.
Or the Gift of
Yeah.
Flesh, depending on how your specific opinion on the Titans, I guess we would call it.
Sure.
I don't actually think that that's the whole story. Because Deathwing, in one of his inside Aberrus, you find this book from Deathwing where he scratched out certain parts of the original story that the Titans told about how the world was made, and he sort of amends them. I think it's actually called Deathwing's Addendum or some shit like that. The in-game book.
I recall seeing that.
Yeah, he
Briefly.
scratches stuff out and he writes how the Titans lied about certain things.
Oh yeah.
And then in Odin's book, we know that the keepers that left to go to Avaloran left because they believed the lies that, according to Odin now, the lie that the Titans didn't create everything on Azeroth. And then they go on to say, for can something truly be considered created if it has not been ordered first?
Yeah.
I believe...
That ties directly into the Eyes of the Earth Mother story, actually.
How so?
So, in the Eyes of the Earth Mother, it's in at least the one out of Folk and Fairy Tales. It said that the world was already there, and when the Earth Mother awoke and walked the Earth, she came across these primordial elements and made friends with them, and the world was kind of just unshapen and kind of barren. But she sensed a deep darkness, deep within the earth, something palpable. But she wouldn't succumb to their influence or whispers, and so she made friends with the elements and ordered kind of things and did what she thought was what she wanted to do until finally she was like, yeah, I'm going to give birth to the light of my heart. Then she gives birth to Anshe and Musha, and they're essentially like the first two deities created from her, right?
Okay.
And then like there's references to the stars, which I'm assuming would be the Titans and stuff like that. And basically what it's saying is that like the darkness was always in the world. It was always part of the world.
Yeah.
And if the world is of Azeroth, then the darkness was probably also always part of Azeroth. So
yeah,
it's
I
one of those
agree.
things where like how do you excise something that's always been there? So it's said that essentially once her children, Anshe and Musha, had made themselves weapons and grown strong enough through sport and play, that they were to watch over the world while she rested, because she used so much of her energy creating and doing this like stuff that she has to go to sleep, essentially. The Earth Mother is also responsible in pretty much any mythos from the Tauren for creating the Tauren.
Yeah.
And it was this action that seemingly left her susceptible to, or kind of that allowed the darkness to come through potentially, because it's not until after the creation of the Shuhelo and I believe the introduction of them to Anshe and Musha that darkness first strikes them. And it's at that point where some of the ancient Tauren or, Shehu Shuhelo or whatever are afflicted with madness and that kind of thing. But I will also say that I'm still immensely suspect of the Earth Mother story, because ANR also fits incredibly well with the Earth Mother. Like the Earth Mother story, a lot of people don't realize this, I would think, but in the book there's like this circular key. The book doesn't have a traditional, it has a traditional table of contents. When you go through it, each story has a picture that represents the story, and the one for Eyes of the Earth Mother has green eyes. And that just makes me think, the vassal of life disguises treachery, beware the eyes of green. And it makes me think of ANR. who has white eyes and who I think is driven primarily by envy, which is associated with the color green.
Yep.
And so I'm always extremely cautious about just flat out believing that the Earth Mother is Azeroth, because in some contexts it makes total sense.
Yeah.
But in other contexts, ANR actually fits better. And if that's the case, then the darkness inside of the world is actually Azeroth, and the thing that corrupted ANR's creations was Azeroth, and she's pissed off about it, and so she's fucking throwing a fit. And that's why she's done the things that she's done.
Well, it could be almost both. So if I took what you just said there and I link it up to my theory, it is possible that the Titans, ANR and the rest of them, all of the cosmological forces, so to speak, are basically the enemy of reality. So the enemy of Azeroth, of the original Earth Mother. And if I'm just taking your story now, or your theory now, and I sort of place it on top of my own, what happens when you are literally the Titan of life? You come from the cosmic realms of life. You are the one that creates life. You come to this planet, and you find that this planet is not only creating life, but it's much better than you at it, right? Because it's creating life in all sorts of ways, in a way that the ecosystem works perfectly well, because we know what happens to life when there isn't some outside force of order imposed on top of it. You can go play Alternative Draenor to see how chaotic life gets, because these cosmological forces, while they have while order is order and life is life, they're not perfect at it, because the power that they have is stolen. It's not their own power, so they don't actually understand how Azeroth creates life. They can mimic it, and they can mimic it decently well, but they can't do it perfectly. And so she's envious. What happens is the Titans are all envious of Azeroth. They hate the fact that Azeroth can do this, but they also realize that this is a huge threat to them. This is where they split Azeroth into two things, Argus and Azeroth, the Maker and the Unmaker, thereby bringing about the darkness, because before, the darkness and the Maker and the Unmaker was one, in complete balance with one another. But by splitting them, darkness is now unleashed as its own power. No longer in balance, but now its own power. So it sort of explains that part of it. And now you have my own theory of how the mortals came to be, the curse and the gift of flesh. The Titans arrive on Azeroth. They find these fleshy beings that they consider to be an abomination.
Yes. They were already there.
Yes, and they turn them to stone, to mindless robots to fight for them.
The Argus fight gives it away. Remember when Argus re-originates you?
Yeah.
He uses re-origination on you. You get the re-origination pulse in the spirit realm, which is only made by ANR's spirit anchor tree that she puts on the ground. There's Titanic essence. You collect it, you give it to Khaz'goroth, and what does he do? He fucking Titan forges you with it. He gives away that Titan Forge can't be created without re-origination. They have to start with something else.
Yeah. I mean,
so they eradicated mortal races, is what
100%, because they couldn't trust the mortal races. You know, the problem for them was
they didn't think they had it in them.
Yeah, they believe that because they want control, because they're not perfect, they don't actually know how to create life in such a way that it is in balance. So what do? They control instead, thereby building these the same with the Emerald Dream. The Emerald Dream was always there. It's bullshit that it was created by ANR. ANR interfered with it. ANR interfered with it and sort of fucked around with it.
The Emerald Dream and Nightmare are definitely tied to Azeroth and Argus.
Yeah.
Like 1,000,000%.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Especially when it says, when he's being tormented, Argus's only solace lay within its dream. Like, hello? And he's called the Emerald Star? Like, okay, dude. What the fuck is that? The Crooked Serpent watches from the endless sky. Even though it has no eyes to see, it dreams of infinite endings and beginnings. Like, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So just some things. yeah, I totally agree. Sorry, continue. So there was mortal races there. They showed up and they were like, fuck this.
Yeah, let's make these mortal races into stone, right? Because we want mindless followers. And what happens the second the old gods re-gift them flesh? They scatter.
They get... They get complete and total free will. Can I talk about that? Or
Please,
real quick?
please. Yeah, go for
So
it.
Khazalgar has a sect of Earthen that, although they have been completely separate geographically, pardon me,
Mm-hmm.
from the other Earthen and have not interacted with them whatsoever because of an anomaly deep below the Earth, which is the sector that is labeled Khazalgar.
Mm-hmm.
These Earthen have actually developed very similar behaviors to those afflicted with the Curse of Flesh. I'm going to go out on a limb here and just take a guess. I think the reason why is because I think that the high pressure environment, the high stress environments that give them these qualities, I don't think it necessarily has to be old gods. It could be, but I think it could be Azeroth. I think
Yeah.
Azeroth is a very pure expression of free will.
Yeah.
That's the key with the mortals that are all connected to her. It's their choosing to do the right thing, and through their perspectives and lessons learned that I believe anyway, that Azeroth is like learning about herself and kind of it's that concept of the cosmos kind of witnessing itself like through the eyes of different beings. And I think the mortal perspective is so important because, as it's been expressed so many times in World of Warcraft, mortals have free will and eternal beings don't. Eternal beings are more bound by their realm of creation. You know, demons are gonna always be more chaotic and a little more destructive.
Yeah.
But mortals aren't like that necessarily. Mortals are seen as weak because they don't last very long, and because, you know, their flesh is weak and stuff. But as we've learned, as everyone should know by now, that is exactly what makes us strong. It's our ability to make those decisions. That is so important. So to continue with what you were saying, I think that Azeroth is that expression of free will. I think we're going to find out that these Earthen are they either have free will because they've been exposed to the essence of Azeroth and that has done that to them, or and that very well could be happening to all of the cosmic beings, by the way. The more time spent around Azeroth, the more mortal their behaviors may become. And if that's the case, then that could be a very bad thing or a very very good thing. You know, gods turning mortal and maybe being terrified to die, it might not be the best thing for them. You know, they might really resist that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you're on the money. 100%. I absolutely agree with you. The reason there is this part of the Earthen that is breaking free. Now, of course, we'd have to finally get into the War Within to know how long ago this split started to happen. But I would not be surprised that, yes, this is also the reason why some of the keepers went their own way, right? Because even though the Titans tried their best to impose order on these beings and turn these beings into, you know, their slaves, Azeroth is still around. And, you know, there's theories that the old gods belong to Azeroth and that they're actually Azeroth's or part of Azeroth's creation. There's theories that the old gods come from the void. I don't even necessarily think it matters at this point where the old gods come from, because as I told my chat last week, the thing is, if the old gods somehow have a connection to Azeroth and they believe truly that they can corrupt Azeroth, even though I don't believe they can, but they'd say they can, or they think they can at least, that connection goes both ways. So if Azeroth wants the old gods to do something, she can absolutely make them do that thing, right?
I kind of think she can too, bro. There's a reason why N'Zoth's head... There's a reason why they all look different and exhibit different powers, in my opinion. And I think that's because they don't necessarily all come from the exact same place. I think that they're different. They're similar, but very different. And so that is to say that I can find and draw connections between Deathwing and N'Zoth and Argus and Sargeras. There's a fractal that I think is kind of going on there. Let me put it this way, in my opinion anyway, the likeliness that the old gods are actually like born directly from either the consciousness of Argus and or Azeroth or both simultaneously is extremely high. Like, I feel like the old gods represent that ineffable truth, that internal darkness that you can't, it's like the Shah. You can't just ignore it. You can't just pretend it's not there. You can't just tear it out. You know, you can't Xiaohao taught us that. You got to learn how to confront these darknesses
Yeah.
and how to reconcile them within yourself, because otherwise you're just going to be like Sylvanas, where you have a soul that's in conflict, right?
Yeah.
Hence the war within. It's a deep internalized war. It's not just about a war underground. It's about an inside war. It's about Anduin struggling with his own doubts and those things, and that's why I think Yashiraj is going to become very important once again. But that is all to say that I really like what you said about how the old gods thinking they can corrupt her. I want to say something about all of the all of the forces.
Mm-hmm.
If Azeroth is think about how gods work, okay? Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like oftentimes we see God, whatever that is, kind of in our image, right?
Yeah.
And so I think with the story of Sargeras, falling through the collapsing well of eternity and witnessing Azeroth's eye opening and becoming enraptured, and him perceiving her as demonic, corrupted, and most importantly his.
Yeah.
The idea that the story that the old gods are trying to corrupt her to make her, whatever they want, and that the Titans are also doing it. I think that this is a reflection of lesser beings not understanding their creator. They all see the creator in their own image, whether that is demonic or titanic or void, whatever that is.
Yeah.
They all want her to be that. What these forces don't understand, I think, is that she already is all of that. And that's the reason why any of these forces and individuals, this is the whole first one's thing.
Yeah.
Is the Rim in Exile part, what is it, 7? Rim in Exile part 7 or maybe 8?
Oh,
he says oh, it's the epilogue. I'm gonna go to the epilogue, sorry. 1 second, I just gotta read this part to you. Rim in Exile, where the fuck is it? Oh, there it is. Let me read this one. It says, sorry.
No.
I think it's maybe 6. I can never fucking remember. Farim, you son of a bitch.
That's
so many entries.
I've given up on so much of the Shadowlands lore. Just because
Here it is. It said, so this is the 4th page out of 5 for this journal entry, so I'm like skipping a lot of context, but he says, long have I scoffed at what I learned of Titans, or the Void Lords, or demons of the Nether. I held Death's pantheon in higher regard.
Yeah.
But now I know that they are just as limited. Truth lies not in one direction or another, but in their intersection. The first ones had parceled out their gifts, but gave no child all of them. No wonder these offspring bickered with such incessant jealousy. Their very nature was one of denial. So what Farim believes he recognizes here is that all of these creations of the first ones, of the creator, are all equally in denial of their own existence, and it is illustrated by their incessant need to try to gain control over Azeroth. And the truth of the cosmos and its cosmic soul and the perspectives therein experienced by every living being ever is that the cosmos naturally will trend toward harmony. It has to.
Yes.
And if something is able to recognize the lattice work upon which that harmony is achieved and shatter it, that hypothetically that could basically cause a permanent imbalance that would basically shift the cosmos into a permanent state of whatever that might be.
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible personally, because as Farim also speculates in his epilogue, he believes that there's a possibility that the first ones did not design everything so that it would last.
Yeah.
He says, what if it's not meant to last? Like, I hope that the first ones considered this possibility, because if not, like, what are we gonna do? And so, I think that's really the key here of like all of these conflicting different perspectives, whether it's Titanic or demonic or draconic or Shath-Yar or old god, whatever it might be, that none of them are invalid.
Yeah.
None of them are wrong. They're just not being considerate of one another. And because they are in denial by their nature and cannot find harmony, that is why the mortal is so important, especially the mortals connected with Azeroth, because it is our job to be able to look through the bullshit And that's why I love what you and I do so much, because if we were in the world of Azeroth, we would be doing, I think anyway, what Azeroth would want us to do.
Karazhan!
Like,
I'll go read.
We're trying to find harmony. We're trying to understand how life and death coexist. We're trying to understand how light and void coexist. And the entities bound and associated with those forces are not interested in finding out. They don't care. They don't care. And I'll stop with this. Other alternative thing that I want you to think about is posed by someone in my Discord several times. They never shut up about it. Not that it's a bad idea. They just never shut up about it. Is that, and it's not one that I fully believe, but one I like to play with, is the idea that maybe the Titans, and maybe not all of them, but some of them are trying to get out as well. That they feel that their existence is a prison also, and they want out. And how can you blame someone for that? Like, if your whole existence is this role that you've been given by this higher power that you don't necessarily fully understand, and because you're so biased in your view, I mean, how is it not going to happen? And I think that's where the whole idea of the World of Warcraft comes from. It's through the conflict that we're finally going to find these opportunities for harmony. Because as we know, not everything is sunshine and rainbows. Let's just pat each other on the back and have a nice day. No, we're going to fight wars, and we're going to have to find the balance as a result, like what happened with the Dream.
So on that, I think you're spot on with everything you just said. I want to add a bit of a different perspective, maybe, on top of all of that. So let's go back to the brokers, right? And let's say... let's go back to the original story of the brokers. The brokers say that in the beginning there were two powers, right? At least this is based on their translation of the first one language, right?
Which and I would say is Azeroth and Argus.
Yeah. Well,
I would think.
No. I'm gonna throw you.
You explain. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw you. I'm gonna tell you exactly what I think. So I should probably go back to what Denuzer said first. Denuzer said when he was asked, "Is there something outside of our cosmological map?" He said, "Well, think of the cosmological map more as like a tiny little piece of a much larger map." Right, so he basically confirmed that our cosmology is a very tiny portion of a much bigger game that's being played. Now, the first ones talk of this original, two forces. And then one of these forces split into two, and then into three, and then into six, and then finally into, looks like it's seven, but the seventh looks like it's a fractal of the six. They can't really make sense of it, but the other force, the second one, they have no idea what that force did.
I think that's got to be creation, personally. But go ahead.
What if the first ones are not the good guys? What if the first ones are the ones who corrupted the creation? So Azeroth, Argus, the actual first ones, right? They're the ones who birthed creation, birthed the cosmological forces. Because if you think about the cosmological forces, life cannot really exist without all six of the cosmological forces. You need all of those powers in order to have life. Otherwise, things will be really messy. And each of these had their own goals, right? They were built for very specific reasons within the universe. It also sort of plays into why, if you look at the Broker's cosmology map, they don't actually call the shadow the void. They just call it shadow. Right?
I noticed that.
Yeah, they don't have, it's the Titan one that says void, because from the Titan's perspective, they're evil void creatures. Shadow is just darkness, right? It's just the absence of light, which is, it makes sense. If you have light, there must be a counterbalance to all of this. But now...
And in some ways, void is even like a violet light. Like there's actually, in War of the Scaleborn, when Neltharion imprisons Raszageth, he actually rips open a void portal to put her into the Titan Vault, and when he rips it open, it describes that the void portal is emitting like purple light.
Yeah.
So void, interestingly enough, void actually isn't completely bereft of light.
No.
There is still some light in there, which is super. It's like dark light, which is just like kind of cool.
It plays into my theory because
Fractal of the
what
Seventh,
I
maybe.
what I believe the first ones is they're that second force, but they wrote it as if they're the good guys. So they came into this universe because they could not create, they corrupted it. They built the Xerath realms, took each of these servants, these gods that were created by Azeroth and Argus, and slightly changed them. This is why the Titans have this almost maniacal view of order, because where they were once meant to work with all of their other cosmological body, friends and colleagues,
Something came in and divided them.
something came in and built this almost cataclysmic, sort of heavily, shall we say, antagonistic system almost, where they're no longer trying to keep each other in balance. They're trying to beat the shit out of each other so that one of them can
erase each one,
each
other.
And maybe this plays also into this Sargeras thing. You say you quote the piece where Sargeras becomes enraptured as he falls through and he sees her as completely demonic. What does demons represent to Sargeras? Freedom. It's how he broke free from the control and the lie that he views the Titans hold. So when he looked at Azeroth and he saw freedom, he saw demonic, because to him, that is his freedom. That was his salvation. Came through the demons, came through the twisting nether. And so, of course, that is what he's going to see, right? Because she is that. It came from her. She created it. It's corrupted at the moment, right? By these first ones, but which aren't actually first ones, but they claim to be, because they are part of a much larger game, right? That's just sort of, I mean, this is wild fucking fan fiction, right? But there's enough.
Well, I mean, is it really? I mean, I feel like a lot of this is kind of suggested by, I mean, what we see in Xerath Ortis. I mean, or Xerath Mortis. I mean, the concept of a pantheon belonging to each cosmological force is weird to me. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me.
I agree with you.
A pantheon is a construct of order, and so, it's one of those things where it's like, this has always been the most contentious part of Shadowlands lore for me, is what are the first ones, and do they really, was it a good idea to go there with it?
Yeah,
so
I agree with you.
When it comes to like the grand scheme of the cosmos, I think that the cosmos is very vast, like bigger than we realize. I think that each realm essentially has its own set of planets, and all those planets might actually be the same planets, but like just in different phases, so to speak. So that is to say that, like, I'm pretty sure that, when you go into the Emerald Dream and you start flying out and you come to these potentially other realms of life, like, what are you connecting to? Well, you're connecting to other planets and planetoid-like objects in space through basically like a spirit network. So like, there could very well be like a realm with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 planets or whatever in each one, and they're thematically aligned with whatever realm they're in. And one has to wonder, similar to what Alex Afrasiabi said back in one of those Legion interviews, where he said, what about, if we go to the Void and see planets crystallized in the holy light of the Naru? And what he's saying there, I don't know if people really caught this, because fuck Alex, but on what he's saying there is like, the light has gone into the void. Like the light has also gone into the Shadowlands. Like, we've seen that these forces and powers can infiltrate each other's realms. So first of all, what you're saying about like an infiltration or something like that, absolutely viable in terms of like something coming in and altering the course of how things were supposed to be set. Some type of external influence, your Genova, so to speak, that kind of throws the balance of the universe kind of to the wayside, because conflict is a better option for survival or whatever than harmony and unity, right?
Yeah.
So I can fuck with that. I can fuck with that. And I was talking with someone in my Discord this morning about how they kind of feel that might be like setting up for what is to come after the finale of the Titans, because they're kind of saying like, how do you make 20 more years of storytelling? And if we think about the Jailer, like, the the jailer was not he wasn't introduced ahead of time. No one knew about him, all that stuff. But they didn't do that with the first ones. With the first ones, we've got a whole zone, whole patch, all sorts of lore about them, like philosophy about them. So they are now set up in a state where they could be introduced and not be a complete ass pull.
I mean, there's entire theories around them, you know, so clearly we know about them. Introducing them now, solid foundation. It works.
I guess for me, what I want, this is just what I want. I really do want them to be Azeroth and Argus. I think that creation and destruction on a cosmic level should be the highest power. Like, I don't think that there should be anything else. And I like to think that like the writings of the, you know, the Cypher Lord Codex and of Farim, that all of these things were, whether we see it as some orderly kind of forceful entities kind of coming in and like, I think that's just a perspective. You know what I mean? Like and it's like being Sargeras stabbing the planet and seeing Sargeras stabbing the planet. You know, like, what's the difference in that perspective depending on where you are? And I think, I guess just for me, I want that first one's level to just be like the highest that it goes. You know, let there be the creator and the unmaker, and at the most make the Holy Trinity and maybe bring in like a preserver, which could be your ANR.
Yeah.
And put us in a state where we have a Vishnu, a Kali, and a what is it, a Brahman or something like that.
Yeah.
And have this kind of like Hindu Trinity that makes up, you know, kind of everything. And even they themselves are maybe in conflict. And it, I don't know. The way that I see it is like the whole universe is one gigantic cosmic soul.
Yeah.
Everything is a cosmic soul, and it's all from Azeroth. I think the key about Azeroth, to kind of talk about something you said earlier, is that ANR can create life, but ANR cannot create souls.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. That's the key thing about Azeroth and Argus, is that they specialize in souls, which is something that everything has. According to the Void, all places, all things have souls. Everything. So if you look at it in kind of a Hindu or maybe even a Buddhist view of kind of seeing this kind of cosmic soul that is split itself, fragmented itself, not in malevolence, not because it's evil, but because it's just doing what it does.
Yeah.
Where it has split itself into these myriad different concepts that we at first glance, we might see as, oh, they've set this up to be in conflict. But maybe part of the key is that you have to sacrifice part of yourself to actually create. Like, and I think part of the whole cosmic conflict is that Azeroth has witnessed a shitload of stuff. Like, she's witnessed maybe just about everything that there is that she wants or needs to witness. And so now, instead of things moving in different directions, everything is converging towards the source. Yeah. And that's why the Emerald Dream books talk about how, you know, maybe these cosmic forces are, it's like, I can't remember exactly what it says, but it says something to the effect of, maybe these cosmic forces are not so much trying to, it basically says, what if Azeroth is the source of all of them? Like, what if she's actually the source? And it's like, come on, bro. You gonna put that in the game? You gonna put that in the game, dog? After what I know about Azerite, like, you can't be doing that, because in my opinion, that's just, it really hints at the idea that, like, she is the creator. And this is, again, I'm kind of rambling. It's what we do. It's just, it's a very, like, it's like a very universal unity-based concept, and one that I do think that Chris Metzen might value. But anyway, for anyone interested in that, that's philosophy. That specific kind of stuff is stuff that I often derive from, like, Alan Watts and those kinds of philosophers. So that's kind of what I think is happening, is like, I like this idea of the first ones and then being this kind of this other thing, but we have also only seen one Xal'atath, you know? I mean, for all we know, the seat of the Pantheon could be from or part of Xal'atath Ortis. Like, we don't even know what that thing is. You know?
I mean, it can be anything, right? It can be the gateway into Xal'atath Ortis. Nothing says
a ship that they built there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be literally anything, right?
It could be the repurposed main machine of Xal'atath. I mean, we saw them channel. Think about this: if it is a first one's machine, remember how Zoval powered all the Xeraths with Azeroth's blood?
Yep.
What do the Titans power their seat with?
I would not be surprised if it's still her blood.
Well, in this
Or
case,
Argus is maybe.
it was Argus.
Yeah.
It was Argus because when they channel through him to basically jail Sargeras. So we're actually seeing like potentially a very similar kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting, I guess, is that like there's a good chance that they have already mobilized their Xerath and it's a mega weapon. Like it's a mega weapon. Like
I mean, I wouldn't.
we
I
saw
wouldn't be
what
surprised.
they did with it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
imagine
be
if they
surprised.
blasted that energy at the world.
Well, wasn't it? Was it Ian or Mason that said when that red dot in the sky gets brighter, we should know that shit's about to get real?
It was Alex. He said that.
Was it
keep an eye
Alex?
on that
Rajavi?
red sky? Yeah, he said keep an eye on that red star in the sky. If it ever disappears, we're in trouble.
Yeah, something
what he
to
said.
that effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Not a good thing. I think they're gonna order Sargeras, and he's gonna come back looking like he's under the effects of domination.
it is possible, but I want to
I'm
point.
really afraid.
I want to link up to your to what you said there with Azeroth and Argus being the center of the galaxy. In my theory, they are. The reason I'm talking about the first ones is I'm specifically talking about the beings that left behind the writings, the beings that built the sepulchre of the first ones, the beings that built the Xerath realms. Those are the beings that are imposters, that have corrupted the creation of the original two creators. And I almost view Azeroth and Argus as sort of like the Holy Trinity from Christianity, which it's three separate entities, but it's the same entity at the end of the day. It makes up the same God, right? And
yes, they're just split apart.
Yeah, but they have the same. They have the same goals. They have the same characters. They do the same things, just in different ways, and they affect. Or they have the same goals, and they have different reasons for existing in order to reach those goals, right? But the goal is exactly the same for all three. And this is the same for Azeroth and Argus. And even if you look in just sort of from a philosophical standpoint, people will sometimes ask, well, you know, why is there evil in the world? Well, because free will can't exist without good and evil. If it was just good, you wouldn't have free will. You wouldn't have freedom.
There's nothing free about that.
Yeah. You're
There's
just
no choice.
Exactly. You need
And
that
it's also
choice.
because it, as illustrated through some of those Xerath things, existence is contextual.
Yeah.
You can't define the light without the dark. You know.
Yeah.
You have to have that contrast, otherwise it doesn't take the same meaning.
Yeah, 100%. And so you can't have life without unlife, right? A maker must have an unmaker side to it. Otherwise, nothing can truly exist. These first one infiltrators basically did not understand this, right? They didn't understand this concept because they don't have that power. They're waging a war. And again, almost here, you know, I'll borrow from Christianity again because it's one of the most well-known. If you look at Lucifer, right? So Satan, he's working within the system, trying to corrupt the system, but at a massive disadvantage because he doesn't actually understand the system. He understands portions of it and he can sort of try and fuck with it, but not really like to the successful overthrow of the system. And this is the same thing for the first ones. They sort of kind of understand how things work, and so they move in and they corrupt the creation, but it's not perfect. And this is where you see someone like Sargeras break free from their corruption, and even though he's not fully free because his mind is still not truly his own, he's free enough to know that something very wrong is going on, right? The universe is not quite right. And the same for Zuval.
And that's really what Chronicle was focusing on, was like Sargeras had kind of had these periods where, especially after the cleaving of that world, where he was really depressed and like, it's very similar to Anduin, like acting in such like he's very upset because he's like aware maybe of what he did, but can't really reconcile it. And I remember Chronicle saying specifically, like, he came to the conclusion that somehow, some way the universe was already flawed.
Yeah.
Like something was wrong with it. And I feel like that very much plays into kind of like the Melkor and kind of Lucifer-esque kind of stories, to be fair.
Yeah.
But also that doesn't mean that he's automatically wrong. It
No.
doesn't mean that that's not true. His perspective on it might not be the whole picture, but it doesn't mean that he's wrong.
No.
But part of what I like to think, I guess, is that the flaw is part of the divine nature of things. Like,
Yeah.
the flaw is necessary because, like you said, like, how can you ever realize, like, perfection, so to speak, if you never look at anything that's flawed?
Yeah.
Like, and if you think about a supreme creator being, like Eru Iluvatar,
Mhm.
Eru Iluvatar, nothing that Eru Iluvatar ever creates can ever be as perfect and whole as Eru Iluvatar.
Yeah.
So, in the same way that the first one's creations are allegedly kind of flawed in nature and kind of fighting each other in nature, I feel like that kind of applies to those same kind of concepts of like, the flaw has to be there, otherwise it doesn't really have any meaning.
I mean, the
But yeah.
problem is you cannot have perfection without imperfection, because how would you be able to notice perfection in a universe with no imperfections?
Right.
Because then it would
Right.
just be ordinary, normal. There would
That's
be
why
nothing perfect.
Any one of these single cosmological forces, this is what I'm always trying to tell people.
Mm.
Do not fall into the trap that just because you hear me and Accolonn go hard on the Titans, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that those who oppose them are automatically good. That's not how it works.
No, absolutely not.
People want so badly to pick a side in this cosmological war when they should be looking within and figuring out who they really want to fight for. And the answer to that question, in my opinion, should be Azeroth.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion. So
Dude, 100%.
we don't want any of these forces to take over. If life takes over the cosmos, it loses meaning. If death takes over the cosmos, it loses meaning. Also, operatively, like, these cosmological forces literally cannot function without each other. If you break that, then the cosmos has no meaning.
I feel like anyone that wants to pick a side just needs to go do the time rifts in Dragonflight. There is a time rift where Order wins, by the way, where Order completely eradicates the old gods, nothing goes wrong, and in my opinion, the thing that went wrong in our timeline is Sargeras. Sargeras turned against them, and that is what pulled the Titans away. If you remember, the Titans were told Sargeras is on this massive fucking crusade, and they went back to try and deal with him, to try and, calm him down. And then, of course, he slashed the fuck out of all of them, and that's what interfered with their ability to completely finish their control. But if you go through the time rift and you do the control time rift, it's hell on earth.
Yeah.
No mortals can survive there.
You talking about the Mechagon one? Where King Mechagon is like mechanized everything? Or you
No, I'm talking about, it's the one where the Titans won, and there's like creatures walking around that's larger than life, and basically you're told that if there are mortal life here, it's very it's like fuck. There's small tribes maybe that kind of survive in the darkness.
Where you go to Elunaria, and it's where the Titans have succeeded, but the world is full of order and life. I remember that. It's like teeming with life, but not the kind of life that we normally would think of, and that's definitely A&R's doing, for the record.
Yeah.
But then there's also the other Titan one where, so here, you don't have to do this, but I think it would help.
No, go for it.
Can I share my screen to you?
You should be able to. Let me just do a pop out of this. Screen share there. All right. Can you guys see Pyromancer's screen? You should be able to. Yeah, they can.
So this is like a little. So this isn't like, I don't think you can really finish this kind of thing. But this is a chart that I've been putting together in Obsidian. I highly recommend Obsidian for anyone who wants a free, just easy link together note taking type system where you can do this kind of thing. So I've taken like different mythos and stuff and made links between characters, and I start to see patterns in this. Even though it looks jumbled and maybe not making a lot of sense, everything on this chart actually is canonical and makes sense, except this right here. This is the biggest area of speculation, which is right here. Sargeras and the Naru thing right here.
Yeah.
So we're just don't don't take too much into that. This Naru thing is just speculation because Elune is said to have helped create the Naru, but if she's darkness, I don't think she could have done it without light. So anyway, anyway, there's a couple things that kind of like stick out here. So like over on this side, for instance, with the Titan Pantheon, you have this bitch who shouldn't be here at all. And then you got these two guys who are really the leaders of the Titan Pantheon. They should be, anyway, the leaders of the Titan Pantheon, the Arcane Masters. These are the two guys that actually represent order, in my opinion. Like, these are the two OGs that actually represent order. Everyone else in this Pantheon, I don't think belongs here.
I agree.
These two right here, Khaz'goroth and Golganeth, I think that they're obviously way more elementally aligned. And thus, I actually think there's something significantly more natural to Azeroth if she is like, if she's like friends with the elements and all that shit, which I feel like there's some evidence that she is. So these two guys are going to be really important, I think, in the War Within. There's a reason we're going to Khaz'Algar, which is in the middle of the sea. So I think we're going to learn a lot about these guys. Father of the Dwarves, father of the Sea Giants, and part of the Pantheon of Order. Agrimar is an interesting one. I could almost see Agrimar being Sargeras' son, but there's not enough evidence of that, so I'm not going to claim that. But so he kind of falls in line with whatever mommy and supposedly daddy tell him to do. So this guy's kind of just under the influence of these guys.
Yeah.
Now we know that Norgannon and Aenar have worked together to do things presumably like creating the Nimue construct, which was ordering the dream. The fact that Norgannon's title is the Dreamweaver has been ignored for far too fucking long.
Yep.
He is also a specialist in order, space, and command. Norgannon there's actually an ability in the game called Norgannon's Command, which just screams domination, but I digress.
True.
He also holds a fucking Titan disc with blue order runes on it that don't look that different from domination. So, basically what I was trying to, I guess, point out here is there's some relationships between these Titans and these beings, right? Like, you kind of see how Azeroth is kind of the center, how she connects with Zereth Vitae, Argus with Zereth Mortis, through the Emerald Dream, Shadowlands, and Ardenweald, and how the Titans, whether it's through influencing the Eternals, kind of basically ordered both the Shadowlands through the Arbiter construct and the Dream through the Nimue construct, essentially bringing order to two realms that do not fucking belong to them. Yeah. And kind of throwing things out of balance. I think it's really key because how I see it is that the cosmic forces, there's a big wheel that only turns if souls are flowing. So if you can stop if you can halt the flow of souls by ordering the two realms which they are allegedly bound to or connected to in any capacity, then you basically control how power moves in the cosmos. Yeah. If you can do that, then you can starve pretty much whatever you want of power so that you can have more power. Yeah. What I'm afraid of is that Aenar doesn't give a fuck about any of this shit. Doesn't give a fuck about any of this. What she wants is that right there in the middle. That's all she wants, is that right there. Yeah. But that's really all anybody wants. So it's not necessarily just her. This is obviously just Titans and Eternals, but this is just something I've been working on that I wanted to show you because I think that visual aid will help a lot in trying to understand these relationships because they are complex.
Well, I'm glad you told me about this obsidian because right now, up until now, I've just been using fucking paint, right? And just keeping like a bunch of fucking paint shit around to try and keep track of everything as it goes. But if you go to Agrimar on this chart, right? And you remember that there is a potential that Sargeras is actually Anshe, right? And that Elune is Musha, then Agrimar doesn't necessarily have to be the son of Sargeras. But if we are consistent and we say that these beings don't know how to create anything new, but they can co-opt things. Agrimar could have been made very much in the almost image of Sargeras as a way to, in case Sargeras ever does get free, Agrimar can take his place, and they do have a replacement now that, sort of becomes the...
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, 100%, right?
When
Agramar became
when
the
Sargeras went off.
enforcer.
Yep. Yep. He absolutely did. And then remember his title during the Argus fight. His phase is called the Protector Redeemed, which is like, okay, dude. Okay. But yeah, I think so. Skiz says in my chat he thinks that it has to do with the swords, and I think as you have been on on track of for a while now, the weapons. I think the weapons are the key. The fact that we saw Sargeras in this kind of presumably, I'm going to show you. I'm going to pull something else up.
Yeah.
Presumably kind of dominated kind of state. Here's my other. Here's my other one. Sorry, hold on a sec. It's got to load in.
That's how I feel pretty much always.
This is my big visual thing where I get to see colors and themes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
This type of shit is not an accident. You see a motherfucker in blue runes wielding a fucking blue Morn blade. It's very clear that's what it is. We go to the Shadowlands and we learn the Primus made other Morn blades before Frostmourne. It's like, come on, the repeating cycle that's happening going on here. Yeah. If this motherfucker wasn't imprisoned by the old god or by the Titans, he's going to be. Because this is either a picture of the what people don't realize, I think, which is kind of scary, is that this image does not have to be a picture of the past.
No.
This can be the future. This can still happen.
Yeah, of course.
Which is pretty scary. So what Skiz, I think, was insinuating was that Agramar is potentially something akin to, if he's wielding a blade that has any type of essence link with someone like Sargeras, hypothetically, that could be part of how he got free. You know, there is that story about how these two fought and their blades met and then they both broke.
Yes.
And if we're talking about, you know, Morn blades being the mechanism of control, then, well,
makes sense.
That's probably how he got free. And think about it this way. And here's the art of them fighting. There's this canonical art. Sword's not broken, but it does look like Gorabal. And he also does look demonic. You got Agramar here, who of course you don't see.
Yes.
Oh, the Hearthstone art, when Agramar's under control, he's got a full sword and blue eyes.
Yeah.
And when he's not, his sword is broken.
Oh, okay.
So it seems like these weapons, even if they're not outwardly obviously mechanisms of control, like it doesn't, how do I put this? Just because you can't see the runes on a weapon doesn't mean they're not there.
True.
So it's just something like even Anduin's swords. You know the story of like Gorshalak and how like Gorshalak, you know, in the RPG lore, how Gorshalak was like a semi-sentient blade.
Yeah.
That if wielded by an evil being, it would sunder itself in two.
Yes.
So that almost sounds, it sounds kind of similar to Shalator and Elemain, which are like ancient elven blades, which I'm pretty sure are probably linked to Anshe. Anshe, by the way, supposedly has dual swords, which Sargeras does not have, obviously. But the whole legend about the sword splitting itself in two is probably not a coincidence.
Yeah, probably not.
So even if it's just like thematic inspiration. So I don't really know where I was going with this, but I think the point that I was gonna make was that there was something in there. I don't know what I was saying with that.
I mean, no, I think personally, that is pretty much fucking spot on, right? I in my personal opinion, I think when you sort of get away from the idea that, you know, everything is just the way that it looks like on the surface, and you start to realize that there's a lot more going on that is in the game. It's literally like, it's in the game. It's said in the game. It all just depends on how are you reading it, right? What are you reading? And then also, how are you reading it? I'll go, for example, just very quickly. Sargeras, obviously now completely corrupted with the Foul, stands against all of the Titans and all of their might combined. Now, the official story, as it were, is that the Titans are just naturally weakened against Foul, which is kind of true, right? They do have somewhat of a weakness to Foul, but Are we
Allegedly.
truly convinced that they are so weak to Fel that one guy kicks all of them in the dick? That is the same
we're
as
led to
them, by the
believe
way.
he did a 1v6 Makara.
Yeah, and he's
Is
the same as
what
them,
happened.
according to the books, right? He's
Yeah,
the same as them.
shit.
Like,
Yeah,
there's no fucking shot,
bullshit.
right?
He has to be a power level up. And if you look at like
Talk about
Lucifer and
Titan
Melkor,
plus.
yeah, if you look at your Lucifer and Melkor, they were given the greatest gifts from their creators. Like they were the most powerful.
Oh yeah.
So Sargeras being the most powerful and kind of being at a different level than them definitely seems reasonable to me. It's also funny to me that Titan souls are allegedly susceptible to Fel, although Argus was being absolutely barraged with Fel and was not destroyed.
Yeah, he was I mean, he wasn't fine, but he was just chugging along perfectly well, right?
One thing that was pointed out to me is in the cutscenes, when you arrive on the seat of the Pantheon and they call the soul of Argus there,
yeah,
it's actually very blue and green. There's a ton of green, infused in it. After you kick Argus's ass, and you see the cutscene where Aman'Thul's like, "You have done well, mortals." You can see Argus's world soul, and almost all of the green is gone from it. But that doesn't mean that it's Fel demonic energy. People have to stop and consider the possibility that it wasn't Sargeras. Oh god, this is one of my favorite theories. I'm not going to get into it, but I love to play with the idea, and I'm not going to get too into it, that it was not necessarily always Sargeras who was running the Burning Legion.
I agree actually with you there.
Yeah, I think ANR and the Primus are extremely likely candidates to be manipulators of the Burning Legion.
I mean, like, let's just go 100% back to the cinematic where the Necrolords are collecting information on the Burning Legion. Like,
yep. Remember in the Canrathad Ebonlock storyline, Akko, where he fucking interrogates that Doomlord, and the Doomlord tells him that the demons used to serve the Titans as slaves?
Yep.
Remember that shit?
Yep.
Until Sargeras allegedly freed them. That's pretty fucking scary to think about. Like, Bellfire is people call it death fire, but it's not. It's fires of life.
Yeah.
That's why they're green. They're fueled by death, just like life is. But it's fucked up, dude. I actually, with my twisted fucked up theories, I can actually come up with a relatively viable theory, I think, about ANR and the Titans being the ones actually running the Burning Legion in its late stages, and them being the ones that were tormenting Argus and manipulating and controlling Sargeras through his connection to Argus, and basically lying about everything. You know, those visions of Argus where it says this being was much more powerful than the minion of the shadow had been. Then she had witnessed flashes of destiny. Now Illyria lived a lifetime that surpassed the existence of the universe. It was energy spinning out into the cosmos. It found warmth near a sun and fell asleep, and a world formed around it to protect it as it grew. Generations of life lived and died upon it. Then it was betrayed. It was bound by something powerful. And it goes on to say, pain, it hurts so much. They used its power to revive their fallen souls. And we have a literal group of Titans who are found in the fucking Titan architecture raid in the core of Argus, who are apparently being tormented. Oh, the poor Titans being tormented. It's a shame that no one can hear them except Magni. So that's fucking convenient. And then we defeat Agrimar, right? Then we immediately go to their seat of power, where they use Argus's power to immediately bind Sargeras to the seat. Like, they knew exactly what the fuck they were doing the whole fucking time. They knew exactly what the fuck they were doing. And the fact that Aman'Thul says to Argus, "Time answers to me, Unmaker, the one force that can bind your relentless fury." If that's true, then what the fuck else bound Argus? Like, if it so anyway, just some some alternate thoughts about like who could really be behind some of these things.
I like it. And I will just point out, someone in my chat, Milul, just said, what if Sargeras and Agrimar is actually one entity split into two in order to weaken it even further?
That could also be the case. And when we talk about, look, at the end of the day, what I believe is that every entity in the entire cosmos is a split of a core entity.
Yeah.
So I'm not even opposed to that idea conceptually at all. At
Yeah.
all. I mean, I think that's how the cosmos works. I think we're all children of Azeroth, whether you're
Yeah.
a Titan, whether you're an old god, whether you're a fucking dreadlord, any way you twist it.
Yeah.
If souls come from the creator and you have a soul, you're from Azeroth. So
Oh yeah.
you know,
I think
that's kinda the way I see it.
the other thing to point out here is, let's
Sorry, I don't
say
do screen share anymore.
let's say for example we're gonna go with the theory that Sargeras is actually Anshe, and the Titans captured Anshe, and sort of took him away. You're dealing.
I think he sought their help and then they captured him. Yes, that's what I agree with you.
So you're dealing with the literal son of the creator, right? So something, I mean, you may be powerful as a Titan, but you are nothing against this being. If this being ever decides to really lash out, you're fucked. So it kind of makes sense that you would probably, if you can, split him,
control it.
right?
Yeah.
Get the power under control. And then someone came to me and said, you had a theory that the runes on Sargeras' body are actual domination runes. At the time, I actually had a separate theory where I said, what if those runes are to protect him from domination? Because the other Titans are absolutely being dominated, and he basically had these runes in order to protect him. But now, given the information that you've shared, I am actually 100% on board with the idea that even though Sargeras realizes that something in the universe is wrong, he can't truly act on it because he's still being dominated. So he's trying his absolute best to fix whatever is wrong, but there is this constant sort of, but you can see, dude, when people sort of underestimate just how smart Sargeras actually is.
Yeah, I think so too. He might be the one who taught the Primus how to be a master tactician. Like, let's remember that.
Because he was taught by someone. He actually says this, right?
And the Primus has a fucking memory of the Dark Titan. And the memory is called the Dark Titan's Lesson. Like,
yep.
This motherfucker, I think, probably learned his martial prowess from Sargeras.
Yeah.
So, and I think in exchange, he probably bestowed Sargeras with a blade.
And I personally, I would be 100%, because right now the whole story of Gorabal, Gorshalak, and Teshalak isn't super fleshed out. Like, the actual origins of the weapons are very much, like, fucking open for interpretation, if you will. So I can fully see that be the case. The Primus was the one that forged this weapon for him. And you just look at Sargeras, and this is what drives me nuts. Because people go, oh, Sargeras is just a pawn of Zuval. I'm like, dude, okay, so Sargeras is given this helm, the Helm of Domination, and the Sword Frostmourne. The greatest weapons, Morn Blade, so to speak, that the Primus has ever made. At least that's what the picture wants us to believe. And then it's sent to Sargeras through the Nathrazim, who at this point, according to all the lore, at least Sargeras trusts, right? He has no reason not to trust the Nathrazim. They're the ones who shared the truth with him for the first time. And they obviously give him this blade and this helm, and they tell him, this will secure your victory on Azeroth. And what does Sargeras do? Now, a lot of people will point out and say, well, actually, it wasn't him. It was Archimond, I believe. Or was it Kil'jaeden? Who was the one? Yeah. Kil'jaeden. But remember, nothing happened in the Burning Legion without Sargeras' say-so. The Burning Legion never acted without Sargeras. So, Ner'zhul's body is disintegrated. His soul is bound to the helm, and not really to the sword, because he could get rid of the sword, but it's bound to the helm, and then he's sent to Azeroth. Why do that? Because clearly, if Ner'zhul was kept whole, that would be a much better weapon. It was because Sargeras knew that this wasn't the whole truth. He knew that something, they weren't giving him the full fucking story here. He wanted the power, but he also wanted a way to control that power. And that's why he did it. So whenever people say, oh, he was just made a pawn by Zuval, I'm like, well, I don't think you've read the story of Sargeras. At every point, this dude figures out the moves against him. He's just a step ahead of pretty much everyone the whole time.
Which is a very Primus-esque type of thing, you know,
Yeah.
like always kind of knowing what's right around the corner. The thing about prophecy in the World of Warcraft, as Nobles kind of recently pointed out, is that almost every form of prophecy is missing some kind of information.
Yeah.
I think that's where mortals come into play. I think even Sargeras, I like to think anyway, that somewhere deep down that Sargeras is like kind of relying upon us now. Like, yo, like,
I can see that.
You fucking seen me? I did the fucking thing. Like, I need you guys to step up. I kind of like to think that he has this like faith that it's gonna work out. I have no proof of that at all though. I like to think that this Arathi storyline that we're getting led toward might help us to understand the connection between Paladins and the Holy Light and Anshe and Sargeras as well, because there's a possibility that Sargeras is basically the embodiment of everything that a Paladin would stand for. And people don't even realize it because he looks evil and because we're told that he's an evil guy that does evil things without ever really seeing too much. And the only ever direct act we've ever actually seen him do was him putting a sword in the earth that looks like it may have put the soul of our fucking god back together. So like, how do we like if this guy is basically like where Paladins kind of came from conceptually, I think that says a lot about what he's trying to do. Does being a Paladin automatically make you a good guy? No.
No.
But does this guy have a very clear command over light? Yes. If you would deny that Sargeras has control over light, you're a goofball. The guy's clearly, he's literally flaming radiance and light. Like, it's insane how like he's definitely attuned with it.
It's actually interesting how not foul he looks.
No, he's not fell at all. Like that's the biggest twist about Sargeras. That's why Taryn Gregory said that when they released that cinematic, that they figured that it would leave us with more questions than answers. And part of the reason why is because we were led to believe that Sargeras was fell the whole fucking time. And, you know, I think we're led to believe a lot of things about Sargeras, that like he's a demon, but there is also the possibility that he is in fact not demonic, that he is actually draconic. And, you know, you look at the horns and the wings look just like Deathwing's wings. I'm not even exaggerating. They are identical. So you know, I just look at these kinds of things. I look at the draconic nature of things, and I mean, fuck, there's so much that goes into this stuff. But I like to think that, like, of course, you know, I like to think that he's not the bad guy. But I also, when I try to look at the universe now, I try to see Sargeras as also a victim. You know, he's probably also someone who's been manipulated, and even if he is trying to do the right thing, like Arthas may have been, you know, there may have kind of been a subtle darkness kind of influencing what's going on. And as much as I want him to be this noble and virtuous, you know, warrior or whatever who's trying to fucking save us, that may not be the case, and that sucks to consider. But it is the unfortunate possibility of the way that this cosmos works.
Someone in chat, Savan, asked actually, I need to ask you, what are Sargeras' actual titles?
The Great Sargeras, the Dark Titan.
He has a few.
Lord of the Burning Legion.
Isn't it something Defender as well?
The Defender of the Pantheon. Champion of the Pantheon? Defender of the Pantheon? Champion of the Pantheon, I think.
Okay, I'm checking it now. His former occupation was Champion of the Pantheon.
Occupation, that's the main one's the Dark Titan. The Fallen Titan is another one. The Dark Titan, the Fallen Titan, Lord of the Burning Legion. Which is funny. How do you call this motherfucker a Dark Titan? Like what? Like look at him. Like what? Because his skin is black? So what? He's literally on fire, bro. Like he ain't dark.
That's the most light you'll ever have.
And that's why I'm saying, bro, if he's Anshe, it flips WoW's lore on its fucking head. Like people have to realize that, like, if Sargeras is actually Anshe and is related to Elune, that's fucking nuts. And like the fractals go off the fucking chain if you do that. Like it's insane. So anyway, we probably I don't know how much time you have.
I'll leave you with this thought, right? Because it's already 11 where I am.
Yeah.
But I'll leave everyone with just one thought. while having the opportunity to talk to Terran Gregory on Discord, he made, like, dude, the guy's a fucking, like, he is media trained as fuck. Like, you can't get shit out of him. Like,
I figured that out when I talked to him at BlizzCon.
Yeah, like, you ask questions in all sorts of directions, and he's just like, oh, can't really talk about that. Or, he's like super well trained in what he can and can't talk about. But one thing he did say, and he never mentioned the cinematic. All he told us was, remember that we never do anything by accident in any of our cinematics. If it's in the cinematic, it's there because we want it in the cinematic. Because he basically told us they go through the cinematics frame by frame by frame to make sure that everything is there. And then he said color is also never an accident. If they make something a specific color, it's because it actually means something. And they won't say always. They don't want to make it super obvious. But to those that pay attention and is able to link things together, it should become super obvious. So
think about Bolvar. You know what he said to me about that cutscene with Bolvar and Sylvanas?
Yeah.
He said, yeah, it's interesting how he changes from orange to blue. And I thought, yeah, that is pretty fucking interesting. And now that I'm thinking about it, he changes blue, like the helmet. Dude. I think it's basically, it might be like a little bit of a hint of like the change from fire to ice, which directly relates to the Sargeras getting dominated type thing that we were just talking about, of like how even domination can overcome this flame, and like that power is coming through.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
that's what's so scary about it as a power, is it's the only thing that we've seen flat out able to resist domination so far is Azeroth herself. The only thing.
Yeah.
Everything else bends to domination. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt if I did.
No, you didn't interrupt at all. I mean, I think domination is, again, this sort of language of Azeroth, the language that she used originally. So if we want to use sort of a Lord of the Rings reference, the song that was used to create the world, right?
The original commanding song, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Domination magic is a corrupted version of that. So the Primus may be in trying to replicate this language, because in Lord of the Rings, song is a super important element of the story. In WoW, language is a super important element of the story. All
in Zereth Mortis, the song becomes like the big thing. Like the whole theme of Zereth Mortis is the song.
Absolutely, right? And you learn the language of these beings through the song, right? And through trying to understand their song, because their language is very musical in nature, which suggests that
like
is
Naru.
But once again, when the Naru speak, it's musical. Like, you go back and you listen to you watch the cinematic between Xerath and Zira and Illidan. The way she speaks, it's very melodic.
Chiming.
Yeah. It's like
and like she makes like ringing sounds and stuff.
Exactly, right? Yeah. But that song has been corrupted, and domination magic, I think, was the Primus fucking around with the creation song, the language of creation. And by some
kind of being the ultimate evil.
I would not be surprised if he is actually like one of the super evil creatures of the universe. And he tried to create this sort of dude, it's just too fucking weird. Like, he's the rune carver, caught inside but not caught inside. Nothing about that dude's story makes any sense to me at all. Like, I'm sorry. He's just a piece of shit.
Can I run to the bathroom real quick and then come back and finish with one more point, and then maybe we wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll be right back. Sorry.
All right, bro. No worries. All right. Welcome, everyone. Happy to be here. Hidden in plain sight. True. I still want to hear what you guys think about Quanzu and Quanzu Zal. I've been thinking about Quanzu a lot. I have some theories, but not yet ready to share. But I do have some theories, although I think we may learn a little bit more about Quanzu either in the next Chronicles or maybe in the War Within, is what I think. we'll get it right. I just want to quickly take a moment to thank every single one of you for following, for subscribing, for the gifted subs. Let me just quickly go through this and check. Ramnax with the community sub, really appreciate you, fam. Snobby, thank you so much, bro. Drenaman with the sub. Tajanor with 50 community subs. Actually, 75 community subs, because 25 and then 75. Really appreciate you so much for that. And then, of course, Eric the Great, Garabashi, Night Creature, Mr. Cruikshank, Benzu, Yakers, Tatsuma, Drops Fart here, Ren the Weirdo, thanks for the 30-month sub, dude. Derfei, Skinny Pete, Korer, Chris, holy shit, Thorwald with the 23-month sub, really appreciate you, bro. T-Bears, Rushified, Rugged Rock, Ball, and Wu-Tang, thanks for the follows. Really appreciate all of you. Love you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries, bro. No worries. I was just taking a moment to thank all of the followers and shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the Primus is an interesting one. He has a lot of powers. He even has memory magic, which he exhibits in the Korthia questline, something he should not fucking have. He actually uses First One's magic himself, which is just not a good look. The fact that Zereth Mortis is also overgrown with, well, growth, I think is really a hint that ANR has been there. The Primus also has a memory of ANR. It's the echo of ANR. So I think that she was once there. I like to think that the Titans have kind of disguised Zereth Mortis and made the First Ones look like orderly beings because they have actually gone in there and used their mechanisms and basically made it appear as though it's a thing of order. Another instance of kind of like the Titans kind of like seeing the divine in their own image, kind of imposing themselves upon it. But regardless of that, I think what I was going to say before that about the Primus is that, I mean, this guy basically essentially helped craft. He helped understand the essence of what allowed us to withstand domination, and then turned that essence into a crown, which is like, and then he put that crown on the, he put that crown on the Arbiter, and people have a little bit of like a Mandela effect, I think, on this. People seem to remember, and this didn't happen, a cutscene or something where we put the crown like on Pelagos and like we really talk about all that stuff and like that doesn't happen. Like the Primus makes the crown and then it goes on Pelagos and we never talk about it. Never. So I don't know if that's I don't know if that's rewriting or what that is, but we've essentially created what could be used as a weapon. I would think that is even more powerful than domination itself, because it's built out of the free will of mortals, which is fucking crazy. And as we know, free will, if that's something that is attributed to Azeroth, then that's a pretty big deal. So the Primus could end up being really one of the biggest fucking bad guys. And really, he was the villain of the Shadowlands. Like, he was the villain, and just kind of got to fly under the radar because he's so clever.
So we have a sepulcher of the First Ones, right? A sepulcher, place of burial, some kind of burial grounds of some kind, right? We've never actually been able to dive into why that name specifically. What if not all of the imposters, the ones that ended up calling themselves the First Ones, even though Azeroth and Argus are the first ones, what if all of them are not dead? What if there are at least two left? One called Primus and one called ANR.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it would be those two. And if on my chart, they're the two that I have marked in green. And there's a reason for that.
But I mean, think that they're the most sketch, bro. Allies. Like, they are the most fucking sketch. You look at them, they don't fit.
They appear to be the infiltrative, like, control mechanism on either side. And so kind of in a way, maybe what that means is like life has kind of infiltrated order and death in order to kind of like get its way over the cosmos. Like, what we see as death is not at all what it's supposed to be like. I'm sure it's not like that at all. Like, there was a boss fight. There was a guy in Sanctum of Domination who he had this concept art for his room, and inside of his room he was supposed to have like some big models of these worlds that were broken and basically being held together by like chains.
Yeah.
And we obviously have some imagery of Sargeras wielding a Mournblade and cleaving what appears to be a planet in two. And as I've pointed out many times, the Shadowlands in the Dream appear as planetary bodies on any celestial map that you look at from pretty much any civilization, even the Zandalari, which is kind of insane. And so the possibility that Sargeras was actually the one responsible for, at least under the control of the Titans, for dismantling and quite literally obliterating what used to be the Shadowlands and crippling Argus in the first place, I think is pretty fucking likely. There's also a possibility that the Dream and Shadowlands used to be linked together and he basically severed them apart, and now Azeroth is bound in reality or something like that. But anyway, that's just spitball bullshit.
I'll just say one last thing about the Primus, and that is that all of the other Eternal Ones have actual real names.
Except the Winter Queen.
Well, the Winter Queen
the one
should have a name, because
it should be Losho, but
yeah, but she clearly knows Bwonsamdi, and Bwonsamdi sort of hints, I can't remember where this was, but Bwonsamdi hints at the fact that he knows her as something other than the Winter Queen. But she clearly fucking hates him for some reason. Like, it sort of heavily implied that they were lovers at one point, or at least, like, he may be, like, there's a whole quest line where you go to the Winter Queen with Bwonsamdi, and she is pissed, bro. Like, only a woman's scorn.
I gotta look at that. I don't remember that.
Yeah, like, there's
because I've seen some pretty crazy theories that, like, link Bwonsamdi, like, through Hakar, like, to Elune and stuff like that. That Bwonsamdi is basically a fractal for one of the Anzu, or, like, you know, your Anzu seethe kind of type situation or something. I can't put it all together personally, but I've seen theories about that before, kind of linking them together. So I'm interested about that relationship and who Bwonsamdi really is, like who that really is. Like what?
Yeah, the Bwonsamdi thing is never actually. Like, again, this is one of those things in the Shadowlands that is clearly picked up, but then just never really continued with, right? Like, they wanted to go down the road of the Loa and where the Loa came from, but then just sort of decided midway, nah, fuck it, we'll leave it for another day, right? But the Primus being the one that has this, just the word, no name, no anything, just he's just the Primus.
Kind of a scary name.
Of course. Yeah, fuck me, dude. It's pretty weird, right? I don't know. I just yeah.
One other thing I forgot. This was I was going to say earlier is that in Zereth Mortis there's a chamber over near the Dread Gate, or whatever the fuck they call it, where inside it you find these big orbs, or like big machine orb things that apparently house the souls of the Eternal Ones. Oh, yeah? When I went through that, I was like, how do we know, like, if this is where you make the Arbiter with like the essence of it and you like do the binding and stuff there, the person that you're doing the quest with literally says like, I wonder what other beings could be like made from this, like what else could be from here. And when I was going through it, I was like, holy fuck, how do we know that there's not souls inside of these right now? Like, how do we know that the original souls of the fucking Eternal Ones weren't replaced with something completely fucking different? Like, how can we even be certain? Yeah, there's a lot of weird body swapping and shit. It's very obvious at this point that there's gods and stations in places of power that they should not be.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you have these prototype bodies of the Eternal Ones just sort of in Zereth Mortis already suggests to you that something is fucking off here. Something is not quite operating the way that it's supposed to. And I would not be surprised if those bodies were meant to be the real pantheon of death, in case they couldn't actually corrupt the pantheon of death. So if they couldn't
just
corrupt
make something that's basically an overbearing robot.
Yeah, so it would actually act the way that we want it to act, you know? But then the corruption worked just fine, the domination magic worked just fine, and so, you know, because the thing is also, the Winter Queen, or the Eternal Ones, claim that they are the first, right? Like, they were there before anything else. The Winter Queen, in fact, claims that she's the one, or at least she told all of her followers, that she's the one that built Ardenweald. But then there's this
which as we
mushroom
know
dude.
is not true.
Yeah, there's the mushroom dude that says he was there long before the Winter Queen even showed up. Right?
Yep.
Which
And it makes you think, like, what was there before then? And why did it change? Go ahead, finish. Sorry.
No, but it also tells you that the Eternal Ones, at least the ones that isn't the Primus, don't remember their origins. They don't remember their from the start.
Which is why it's forbidden for them to go to ZM.
Yeah, and that
They're not supposed to go there. They're not supposed to know.
You see, and that could also explain why creatures like Amanthul and, Norganon and those claim that they are Titans, because they found Azeroth. They sort of asserted that if Azeroth was born this way, then maybe they were born this way as well. And so, yeah, they just made up these stories of them also being from planets, right? Because they can't remember their actual origins, because in the corruption process, they were changed.
That's an interesting one because, like, in Karazhan, you have, like, these planetary bodies, and in Ulduar and Halls of Stone, too, where you have these planetary bodies that look like they could represent each of the Titans. And so I have been wondering, like, is it possible that the Titans genuinely did each come from some different realm? And if they did, they should not all look the same. That's why I think that they reforged themselves using Xerath Ortis. That they basically remade their bodies. And if they did that, then if you like put yourself into a form, like how do you know that that's not going to affect your behavior and your attitude, How do you know that you're not going to, like, overdo it and make yourself into something a little more tyrannical than what you maybe even intended? Like, the fact that Eonar appears as, like, one of those star bodies is very alarming, because I don't think she should look like the other Titans in that way.
No.
And the fact that the Constellars look that way, like, it kind of, I've played with the idea, and probably we can wrap up after this, sorry, is that like maybe they tried to reshape themselves in their creator's image. Like, if Azeroth is a brilliant star, and Argus is also a brilliant emerald star, maybe they were trying to make themselves maybe they reforged themselves as constellations and stars because they were trying to assume the form of the higher being or something. And if they were trying to do that, which is not a good idea, then maybe they fucked themselves over by doing it.
Well, I may have an explanation for the planetary bodies in the Titan facilities.
Okay.
If you're Azeroth and you're basically, sort of borrowing a little bit from Lovecraft here, but you're basically dreaming the entire Great Beyond, all of the planets and all of the life that goes into it. You would want protectors on these worlds, right? The beings that can protect these worlds. Kind of like Algalon, who is the constellar that protects Azeroth. And if you are an infiltrator that is trying to basically take control, why not just grab the protectors, take them to your newly, refurbished Xerath realms, twist them, turn them into your followers, and let them go, right? Let them believe that they actually do come from those planets, because technically they do. They were born there. They were supposed to... Yeah, sorry, go.
Well, I mean, it could be possible considering, Xal'atath says about Harboron, which is a constellar on the Naglfar, the ship that takes you to Hell, for Helya. She says it was thought that his kind was incorruptible. A lesson from my brothers, I suppose. And, like, kind of what that's saying is, like, even constellars are not immune to corruption. Even in their perfectly ordered constellar form, they're not immune.
Yeah.
And Harboron is kind of turning to flesh. And if the way that I see corruption in this game is that if it can move in one direction, it can move in the other.
Oh, yeah.
So if something can be corrupted, it can be uncorrupted, and the state which you might think it is uncorrupted in might actually be its corrupted state, and you wouldn't know it. So, that's just kind of like a final thought in terms of, like, there's opportunity for, like, they could have been other beings that they posit in Chronicle, they called them and they helped them, but maybe it wasn't so simple. Maybe they commanded them or something along those lines.
Yeah, so. I'll end with just one final thought here, and that is that people should really try and get away from this idea of good versus evil. in
Yeah,
WoW
I agree.
because I think the problem with good and evil is
It's really hard though.
evil really, like pure evil, in other words, someone that is doing something purely for the sake of evil and it is evil with intent to be evil, is actually super rare, right? Most of the evil that we have are people thinking they're doing the right thing that just ends up being super fucked, right? When you look back at it.
Yeah.
And that's really what WoW is, right? If we are correct, and Gul'dan is a great example of someone that is just evil for purely evil's sake, and that's what makes him such a good character in World of Warcraft, because he's one of the few that is just evil, right? He has
It's not really overdone.
Yeah, sorry, go.
I was just saying it's not really overdone. I feel like
No.
he's one of the few. Even Kill Jaden is like relatable, which is
Yeah.
kind of, I mean, in a way, even Gul'dan is relatable. Like he was weak. He was cast out by his clan. He was rejected by the elements. Like, and maybe that's because he was evil. But you know, it's like when you have such hatred and malice in your heart for what's happened to you, like, yeah, you're gonna be a bad dude.
Yeah, I mean, but it's sort of like, you know, with Gil Jaden and even with Archimonde, there's a reason why they chose that power and why they became what they are, right? So to their minds, they're not, what they're doing isn't for evil's sake. It is actually because they believe in the goal. They believe in what they're pursuing. It's evil maybe from our perspective because what they're pursuing is against our interests. But, you know, to the ant, you cleaning a field because you want to build a house, you're super evil. You're breaking their home. But you have a goal. You're not doing this because you want to eradicate the fucking ant. You just, you know, you don't give a shit because you have a house to build. And so you're going to continue doing what you're doing. You know, and
it's so small on the scale. And that's kind of how like Sargeras and the Titans probably think about us sometimes is like, you know, if Sargeras is trying to save his mom, that's kind of a big deal. Like, I think that if I were him, you know, I would. It's that question of is it, you know, 1,000 deaths or just one? And you know, we were talking about potentially the soul of the cosmos. Maybe 1,000 deaths is better.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Remember from Sargeras' perspective, if everything we spoke about tonight is true, for a long time, at least until very recently, Legion really, Sargeras' view of the mortals of Azeroth was incredibly skewed because he viewed the mortals through the lens of the Titans. He believed that we are agents of the Titans, you know, and so we are also a threat to his mom. And I want to believe that maybe that's why he spent so much time around Azeroth. You know, during the whole of the August fight, you can see the cloud from which he would emerge sort of enveloping Azeroth. And he's just chilling there. You know, he's not doing anything. It's not until they rip him out of the cloud that he finally goes and sticks the sword into Azeroth. And I think it may actually have been Sargeras learning, you know, what is it that drives these mortals? Are they actually agents of the Titans, or are they free? You know, are they actually part of? Because there's this interesting thing in the Shadowlands. Do yourself a favor when you go into well, what's the fucking city called? Oribos. If you go into Oribos, right, there's this dude that you have to speak to. It's on your first quest, right? It's right through the inn. Right at the back of the inn, there's this stone, and there's a dude that stands by the stone. It's some kind of like fucking lore dude that stands there.
Okay.
When you talk to him, I don't know if it's during the quest that you have to talk to him, or if you can still do it. I haven't checked it yet. But he then goes on this massive explanation as to why, when we die as mortals, do we not end up in the Shadowlands? And also why, for some reason, when we die in the Shadowlands, do we not go, right? Because the idea is if you die in the Shadowlands, that's death. And it's basically some connection that we have with Azeroth, right? That's literally his explanation. That's all he can think of, is we have this sort of unnatural connection to Azeroth that anchors us to reality insofar as we cannot escape reality. So even when we die, we can just resurrect. which is like
And I
the
think
perfect way to say the army of Azeroth, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think one like the aspect of that also that's interesting to explore is that like, you know, who in how many different ways is this world a prison? And who is bound to reality?
Yeah.
Who returns here when they die? You know,
Mm.
what you know, I think there's a lot to explore in terms of identifying home realms.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna leave you with this. I promise. This is the last thing. I'm gonna say one thing.
Yeah.
One of my favorite theories, and I'm not saying that this is correct. It's just one that I've considered, is that the entirety of Azeroth is inside the plane of order, and that's why the Titans have supreme control here, and why nothing can get in or out is because we're in their realm already.
Okay.
And it's why they can shape and control the world and do the things that they have done, because we're already bound to something that they have supreme control over. And that our reality as we know it is quite literally a Titan matrix that is not actually reality. But I can't, I'm not saying that that's the truth. It's just an idea just based on the
That's an
concept of
interesting
like what really constitutes a prison, and
Yeah.
and is it possible that these entities feel like they're in prison as well? And how much can we blame them for wanting to get out?
Yeah.
But yeah, we should probably wrap up there.
Yeah.
We've been going about almost 4 hours.
Holy shit.
So, that's the way it goes, bros. Chat, that's how these go. If you guys have never seen one before, that's pretty much how it went.
Yep.
When we did this before. we didn't hardly talk about Midnight or the Sunwell, and we didn't talk about the Last Titan, but I think that we kind of tangentially talked about all those things with our other discussions. So
Yeah, I mean, but dude, yeah, we had this idea of the things that we're going to talk about, and we spoke maybe about like 20% of it, and just spent
I know
so much time on. But we had to catch up on this, right? Because it's been
there's just
like
way
fucking
too much.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next discussion we'll do about the War Within, and Midnight, and what's gonna happen there. Because we haven't even fucking touched that much on the Void, which is like one of our favorite topics. Like between the two of us, I think we have made most of the videos on the Void on YouTube.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, there's probably a couple, several dozen of them at this point. So
Yep.
yeah, maybe we can we'll get to we'll chat about it. Maybe see if we can schedule another time to get together and go over those things, because it seems like a lot of people enjoyed it. Lots of good feedback in the chat. And on that note, I would just want to say thanks to everyone who came over and followed or subbed or just listened, whether you're on my channel or Accolonn's. Thanks for supporting us and hanging out with us. We're two of the crazier idea'd people in the community. So means a lot to me that you guys hear us out and like to listen to the discussion. So thanks for being here, Accolonn. I know it's really late for you, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
I mean, I want to just echo everything that Pyro just said there to everyone in Pyro's chat. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out and chilling, and everyone in my chat as well. Thank you so much for all the follows and shit. And no, bro, this has been long overdue. It's been an absolute blast. So yeah, I'd love to do it again. And I mean, fuck it, being awake for WoW lore, that's a good reason to be awake.
That's what we do.
Oh yeah.
I've had nights where I'm up till 3 a.m. because I can't stop reiterating on my stupid fucking chart that I made.
Yep.
So I feel that.
I go through the rabbit holes and then, sort of get fucking stuck on the weirdest fucking lore, bro. Like just all manner of shit. I mean, not even just WoW stuff. Like I'll read WoW stuff and then I'll be like, oh shit, this reminds me of this, and then I have to go read some other lore in some other video game. Super fun.
That's how it always goes. You're like reading about Demeter all of a sudden. You're like, what the fuck? Like, you're reading about Isis and Ra. You're like, what the fuck is going on? You're like 5 pages deep into D&D Forgotten Realms, like forgetting what you were even talking about. Yeah,
true.
That's how it goes.
But all right, bro, take care of yourself and enjoy your stream. I don't know if you're going to continue streaming, but
we'll see. But I assume you're not. So you have yourself a good night, and
yeah, I'm probably gonna hang out with the viewers just for like half an hour, just hear what they have to say, and then I'm gonna go food because I haven't fucking eaten yet, so I'll go do that.
All right. All right, man. Well, thanks again. It was a pleasure talking, and we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely, bro. Have a good night.
You too. I'll see you, man.
Peace, man.